All right, we're ready.
All right. Well, Commissioners, we're starting another full afternoon. Our first presentation this afternoon is from our treasurer, Linda Kazire, and we will be on page 104 of your binders. And Linda, I'll turn it over to you whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Twice in one day, I tell you, we all must be living right. As you're well aware, our mission in the Treasurer's Office is to provide honest, friendly service and to be accountable to the citizens of Sedgwick County through the timely collection and distribution of public funds, financing public services provided Kansas schools, cities, townships, and other agencies. And as you're aware, we have two separate divisions. We have the tax and the tag departments. The tax department is funded by general funds. The functions there are to bill, collect, and distribute the taxes for Sedgwick County cities, townships, school districts, and other taxing jurisdictions, which could be a cemetery district, our fire district, several other ones. Items that we do bill for, of course, are real estate, personal property, watercraft, motor vehicle, commercial motor vehicle, special assessments, and other miscellaneous taxes. Of course, any time we go anywhere or try to do anything, we've got some changes and challenges. We're still working on getting the auto debit for checking and saving programs for our customers that are on the prepayment. We do allow customers that don't have a mortgage to set up an escrow account where they can make a monthly payment so that it's not quite as painful to get a bill twice a year. We do send coupons out to those taxpayers. We've got over 3,000 people that are currently signed up for that project, and it's a very, very good way to help people keep their taxes current, and it also helps them to budget a little bit easier on their monthly incomes. A lot of them are retired people, and it just helps them a little bit. We did add a new remittance processor third quarter of last year. It added us better functionality and better research capability, and of course we still are electronically doing all of our check deposits, so we get our money in a little bit quicker than having it picked up by an armored car service and have it go to the bank. In the 2016 tax budget, we're not asking for any additional funding. We just have to keep making sure that we've got enough money out of the general fund to continue to mail our tax statements current and delinquent, provide us enough staff to do tax collection, distributions, keep our prepayment accounts current, and we do all the depository services for all the other county departments that bring in cash, checks. We do district courts deposit also, and we also do the tax foreclosure sales. Tag's a little more tricky. Tag, of course, you know, we register and renew all the vehicles, and we collect the motor vehicle taxes, collect commercial vehicle fees, other fees that the state requires us to collect, and the fees that we generate there keep us self-supportive. We have 4 tag offices. You know, we've outgrown Murdoch, and I know that's on all of your radars, and the RFP has gone out. It went out Monday. We also probably will be needing to add some more staff to handle more work that's being passed down to us, unfortunately, from our partners at KDOR, the Kansas Department of Revenue. Some of the functions that they have transferred to us were commercial vehicle registrations. We do all the title approval at the local level now, and then all the Department of Revenue does is hit a print button at night. We also collect fees for the colleges and the donations of charities, such as the Eisenhower plate I showed you this morning. We'll collect that $50 and we remit it up to the state, and then the state gets the money to the Eisenhower Foundation. We also sell wildlife and parks permits with your tag renewals, and we also are probably going to need to talk a little seriously about printing of renewal notices. Some of our challenges are, in 2014 we were notified by the Highway Patrol that they're going to move their vehicle inspection operations and staff to their new office at K254 and Rock Road. They're slated to move late 2015. It is going to have a huge impact on our citizens that have to have vehicles inspected that are coming into Kansas from out of state. And the Highway Patrol has also said that they're not going to provide inspection services at any of our substation locations. So if you buy a car from out of state, you're going to have to go to 254 on Rock Road with your $20 cash. Highway Patrol will inspect it, and then they'll come back to us. The latest challenge that we're going to be facing is the Kansas Department of Revenue announced they're not going to provide registration vehicle renewal notices. And beginning in August with the M, N, and O's and going forward. So, Jim, you were the lucky one. You were the only one that got a renewal notice of you 5. They're going to suggest a postcard be sent, and it has very limited information, absolutely no dollar amount.
Who's gonna mail that postcard?
The state will. But it has no information on it, and in order for us to provide the same level of service, we're going to have to start printing and mailing our own renewal forms. And this is going to be additional problems. Here's the front of the postcard that KDOR has proposed. It's blown up for this purpose, of course. It's going to be a standard postcard size. And it'll have your name will be imprinted on there, of course. Here's the back side. If you'll notice, it gives you 3 options: online, by mail, or in person. But if you've got questions, you have to call a 785 telephone number. There is no 800 number associated with this card. Unfortunately, this is going to have a big impact on not only my department but the call center if we choose not to print our own renewal notices, because people are not going to call that 785 number. We're going to have a lot more foot traffic in the offices, and as you know, ultimately we want people to renew online, we want to renew by mail, but this is not the solution. And I have been in contact with Secretary Jordan. They cannot put any personal information on there because of privacy. They cannot put your tag number. They cannot put anything on there because of privacy problems.
Why won't they call the 785 number?
Because it's the state and they are in a 785 area code. They're not going to put an 800 number in.
No, I mean, you said that people won't call the 785 number.
They won't.
Why
They're going to
not?
look here. They're not going. Why would you call long distance? They're going to look in the phone book. They're going to see Sedgwick County Vehicle Department, and they're going to call 660-9110.
And you're going to tell them to call that number.
No, we're going to print their renewal here, and we're going to send it to them.
No, you need to tell them to call the state. They're creating
That's terrible customer service, Richard, on my part.
It's created by the state. You're letting them shove it down to you.
Well, yeah.
If you don't push back, it's just going to continue.
Well, I'm not going to send the postcards. This is what you currently get,
Yeah?
and you will continue to get that.
Are you going to pay for it personally?
No, sir?
Well, we'll have to have that discussion.
Okay, then we will. We also have partnered up with the Kansas Turnpike Authority to let people come and get a free K-tag at the tag offices. 3 times a month, K-tag personnel come to each of our 4 locations. They set up their own booth, and they provide the customer with the free K-tag and assist them in setting them up.
Richard, let me jump in here.
Oh, sorry.
If I could, Linda, interrupt you in here. We're in a situation where we've got a number of challenges with the state, and I outlined some this morning on the revenue side.
Mm-hmm.
What you're basically describing is a kind of a process regulatory challenge they put before us. I think we need to try and communicate this as much to the public as we can between now and then, and I'd like to kind of challenge and throw this out to you in terms of ways that we can try and get the message out to the citizens before this comes in, I guess sometime after the H's and before the N's in the alphabet later on this year. And I don't know if you've got is it July 1 that it switches over, or some
Actually,
other day?
we'd probably start getting the data mid-June, so because they'd probably give 6 weeks notice to people before they renew.
Well,
So probably
I mean, when they start sending out these postcards, how soon's
they're going to
that
start those in
occur?
June.
June 1?
Mid-June is what they told us.
Well, I think we need to try and get the message out as much as possible, because this is just another side of the challenge we discussed this morning, And I don't know, I want to understand all the options and not say what we're going to do specifically, but I'd sure like to try and get the word out as much as we can and use our ability to communicate, whether it's at the meetings and at the commission meetings or through other ways, because I think this is going to be a huge change, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy folks.
That's why I'm going to continue to print the renewal notices.
Well, I think we need to have a public discussion and try and air this out and get as much public attention driven to this as we can.
How much do you think that would cost?
I've got to ask our vendor what he would charge, and I've got David Miller working on it also to see what it would cost us to do it in-house.
Dave, is that?
That's my question.
Okay.
What is your best estimate of the additional expense you're going to have to service your people the way you want to serve them?
The way we need to serve them, it's probably going to be around $100,000,
You think it'll be $100,000?
probably, because we have postage costs.
Yeah, if I might, I would agree with that estimate. That's probably pretty close. Postage alone will run something on the order of $70,000 to send to everybody in the county. That's an annualized cost. It'd be less than that this year. But the other point that I wanted to make is that this is a tag office activity. And so to the extent that that the treasurer elects to do this, the treasurer will pay for the cost of that out of the revenues that are generated by the tag office. And there are some options available to the treasurer, and she's well aware of those. But this is, frankly, this is not much of a budget concern for the county.
Let me ask Chris, if she has to change how she spends the money to operate her office, isn't that ultimately going to be, doesn't that cost eventually show up in her budget or in a reduction in the amount of money? Is it money that she won't send to Topeka, she would have sent in the past, or how does it work, Chris?
No, but she has the ability under state law to increase the fees that she is charging to administer the office. And so there is revenue potential that's available to her to cover the added cost. Now, obviously, none of us would prefer to raise fees locally, but to the extent that the state is electing to shift service requirements down to the county or to the elected treasurer, obviously there has to be a way to pay for those services.
Any comment, Madam Treasurer?
The fee is primarily for the substations. We charge a $2 substation fee at each of the 3 outlying offices. That covers all of the costs to operate those offices, including personnel. I really don't think that it's fair to add an additional fee to generate more money for the people that are using the outlying satellite offices. The statute allows us to charge between $1 and $5. But if $2 is covering all the expenses that incurred by those 3 offices, why would I want to raise it to $4 to cover something that we should be doing?
Well, wait a minute. I think it was the cost of the additional for postage and mailing out the forms that previously had been mailed out by the state, but won't be after sometime later this year. Because we're talking about on this issue that you've raised here, we're talking about a 2015 impact starting this year. It's not only a 16
And it'll move into
it's
16.
the last half of this year too, if I understand it
Yes,
right.
that is correct.
Okay. Well,
So to do that for this year, possibility will probably be we won't fill a position just to be able to do that.
Or raise the fee?
I can't raise the fee in the middle of the year. KDOR will not allow that because it requires computer programming on their end.
it's the only fee that you can raise for
That's the only fee I can
substation,
raise is a substation fee.
and you can only do that once a year.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Okay.
If they call that number, will they send them one?
I'm sorry?
If they call that 785 number, will they send them one?
A renewal notice? Yes, they will mail one. I don't know when you'll get it, but they will mail one to you.
Okay.
I was just curious. So the right now the budget that you have that would pay for this, do you have balance to cover that this year?
If I don't fill one position, yes.
Okay, and I don't know if I mentioned this in a staff meeting or where I may have mentioned this to who I may have talked about this with, but the substation fee, the $2 that you're charging, in my opinion, is I guess presumed to be like a convenience fee. I think the idea is that we've got an office downtown that can manage all the constituents in the entire Sedgwick County, but they go to someplace that's more convenient to them. And therefore we maintain an office close to them. There's an additional cost to Sedgwick County government or to your office as a result of that convenience. Correct. And they pay the $2 fee to do that. Unfortunately, there is no place in the county that could handle those constituents. I mean, really, the substations really are how we handle this really across the entire county. I mean, there is no office that can handle all the people without paying that fee. So to me, this $2 fee is kind of a misnomer. We're simply collecting the fee not because of some cost that we're trying to provide some convenience to them. That's really not why we're charging the fee. We're charging it because we can. I mean, we're using that to fund the office, not because of the costs of running that remote office necessarily. So to me, this fee doesn't really make sense to me, that that's where this revenue would come from. I mean, maybe it's mischaracterized. It ought to be a transaction fee or something that's charged by every site, and it ought to be for every transaction. But to me, it's unfair to call this a substation fee and really only charge that to the remote sites and not at the Murdoch office, I assume. Yeah, Murdoch doesn't pay that fee. So to me, that it doesn't make sense to me.
Commissioner, I think actually when you were in the legislature, 2 years ago, the legislature must have agreed with you because they changed the statute so that fee now can be charged at all stations, including the main station. We locally have elected to continue only charging at the substation, which is what the old law provided. But now it's more akin to an administrative fee, or, as you said, a service fee to cover the cost of service no matter where that service is rendered.
Yep.
So, Linda, what's your solution for next year then? For that cost?
My suggestion? Quit charging me the administrative fees.
Do you have any other options?
Not fill positions.
And putting the onus back on the state that created the problem to begin with is not a solution you'll entertain?
Not at this time.
Then why are you complaining about it?
I just wanted you to be aware.
Well, we're aware then.
Okay.
Is the fee the fee on the receipt is actually called substation fee?
Yes.
Do we have the authority to change that description?
I'll have to check with the state.
I'd like to change, if possible, I'd like to change the name of that from substation fee to administrative charge or transaction fee or something like that.
Okay.
And I'd like maybe have you consider potentially under the rationale that I just provided, maybe consider charging that to all 4 stations rather than just the 3. Maybe that would be enough to cover your costs. Thank you.
Okay. I have a little chart of all the administrative fees that we do pay to County General. As you can see, from 2006 to 2015, we've paid $2.8 million in fees to the county for county employees to work at the tag office.
So will someone address that? I mean, that's a... Oh. Wait.
Oh.
Sorry.
Get me back.
Linda, can you go back
Yeah.
one?
We're going to go get me back one. Thank you.
Well, that's doubled since 2006.
That's correct.
Is that the same for all the other departments, or why? That seems like quite a bit.
Just the tag office pays this. Of my 2 departments.
I sent all of you a note a week or 2 ago about administrative fees. The short version is that they are charged to agencies and operations not paid for out of the general fund as a way of reimbursing the general fund for the cost of support services that are budgeted in the general fund. In the case of the tag office, those support services primarily include data processing. The costs are allocated to all of the various operations of the government, including those in the general fund, on some sort of a rational basis. Different services are charged on different bases, but all of those charges are determined by an independent cost analyst that we hire for that specific purpose, using the audited actual costs of the prior fiscal year. And so have costs increased at the same rate across the entire county? Almost certainly not. Have costs increased more or less than this for some agencies? Almost certainly the answer is yes. And the reason that they have increased at a greater or lesser rate has to do with the utilization of general fund services, IT services, financial management services, accounting services, facility maintenance services by that agency, whatever it is. So as it increases or reduces its use of those services, its administrative fees increase or decrease.
Okay, so is there something that would detail that for the treasurer's office?
I'm sorry? I'm sorry?
Do you have something that would detail that for the treasurer's office,
Yes.
those changes?
Yes, absolutely.
That would support that? And maybe, I mean, I'd like to see it, understand that then.
I'm just curious. So this is obviously your explanation says we have the right, if you will, to charge the office these dollars. If they didn't have the funds to cover it, what would happen in that case? Do we have the right to forgive that debt or to waive it?
Well, we charge these fees principally because we want to recover from grants the cost of tax-funded services that we provide to support those grant-funded operations. The feds have adopted a regulation that basically prescribes how we can develop the cost allocation plan, and it requires us to assess those charges in an equitable fashion across all programs, not just the ones that are funded with the grant revenues. If we start getting in the business of forgiving fees for this program or that program, we run the risk of the feds, who review our plan every year, to declare that we are out of conformance with the federal regulation and therefore unable to assess the fee against federally funded programs.
What grant monies are associated to this office? What grant money are you talking about?
With this office, I don't know that there
I have
any
none.
monies associated.
So are we held to some kind of a federal review on these charges?
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
So we have no discretionary ability to charge or not charge these funds from that office. So we have to charge, and she has to create that revenue somehow.
Yes, that would be my interpretation. Yes. Now we do have the one option of not charging these fees at all. That is having the general fund absorb those costs and pay for it out of the property taxes that fund the general fund. The fees that are assessed to the tag office or to the highway fund or to the ComCare funds and so on amount to, what was the number that I sent you guys?
$4.8 million.
I'm sorry?
$4.8 million.
$4.8 million of revenue to the general fund each year. And Linda's share of that is 300 and whatever thousand she's got on the slide here. To the extent that we chose to forgive that those charges and bear it in the general fund, that effectively would cost the general fund 4 point whatever the number was of revenue, which is the equivalent of about $1 million of property tax. So what we're doing is using the fee to assure that property taxpayers aren't required to subsidize programs that aren't intended to be funded with property taxes.
But in addition to that, any money that I have left in the tag fund balance at the end of the year is also transferred to county general fund. I don't get to keep that money. That goes directly over to county general. So perhaps we should not charge these fees every month, and you'll still get money at the end of the year it probably won't be $398,000, but you would still recoup some of the administrative fees. Because the intent of the statute is for me to be able to run that office with the fees that we generate.
Does that year-end transfer include the fees at the end
No,
of the year
sir,
transfer?
it does not.
Okay.
That's just the monthly fees.
Why can't you pay this additional cost out of that?
Because by law, I have to transfer that to you.
Well, I know, but you would just have less to transfer to us. Right?
If there's enough, if we've got enough coming in, but we don't know. I mean, our revenue varies month to month. But if the administrative fees were just based on the year-end transfer instead of monthly, I think that would be a better solution, so that we could go ahead and do the QLIS system that we'd like to get and do other technology items that we'd like to get without having to up the fee for our consumers.
Go ahead.
Is the county general fund required to provide you with these administrative services?
I don't know.
I mean, could we just say, okay, you got the revenue, here's your space, but you handle all your administrative? I mean,
Well, we pay all of our own utilities, our own
Well, I know.
repairs, all of that right now,
right.
in addition to the administrative fees.
But are we, is the Board of County Commissioners required to provide you these services that are represented by those costs?
I don't have the answer for that.
I don't know that we've ever looked at that question.
That'd be illegal.
That would be a mess.
That would be a mess.
That would be a mess.
It
Yeah.
would be. I mean, it's just what we're talking about.
But
Just
no, that's
No question.
okay.
So all your salaries for all your staff, are they paid for out of the, this has nothing to do with, the administrative fees we're charging the office has nothing to do with salaries, is that correct? It's other,
That's correct.
so we get things like HR services and things, whatever. Can someone please give us a list of the things that are being provided to this office for the administrative charges? I'd like to see a list of those items. Thank you.
Are you going to have a list of how much you give us each year somewhere in this presentation?
I can email it to you.
You have this and the QLIS. How much is that QLIS system
It was about $47,000.
a year?
No, that was.
We're going to look at that.
Yeah, we're gonna RFP that.
I got you.
We're gonna RFP that.
Okay.
And then here's the call center fees that we pay out of tag funds also. I pay for 4 positions at the call center. And from 2007, because that was when the call center started, through 15, it's $1.7 million. And the rest of the call center people are paid out of general fund. But I pay for 4 positions. But that call center is used by not only the tag office, it's used by the tax office, appraiser's office, elections office, and the other is what they have on there. And I'm sorry, Carl.
No, the question, those 4 positions are not part of the 80 positions that you've got
No, sir.
authorized?
No, sir. They're
I didn't see
DIO
them in
employees.
here, so that's in addition to. Okay, thank you.
So here's our division summary. Tax Department 1.3, and then tag is self-funded. And then questions.
Yeah. So I want to go. Go ahead.
I'd like to go back about 7 slides, I think, if we could. And you had a slide, I think we got to asking you some questions, and you kind of skipped over it, and I was interested in terms of, I think you mentioned that,
And then scroll down.
yeah, right there.
Here?
In terms of interns, and would you
Oh,
discuss this for just a minute?
Sure.
Because I was kind of curious if,
in 20...
terms of the one that you hired for a full-time employee, which position they ended up filling, and what you can tell me about this activity.
They're a fiscal associate for the tag office. They work on the mail. And web renewals, they screen it for delinquent personal property taxes, because by law we cannot give you a tag if you have delinquent personal property taxes. And so Ashley screens the mail, she processes the renewal, puts it in the envelope, and gets it in the mail.
Let me ask you, how many employees do you have right at the moment working in the treasurer's office?
We have 80 on the staffing table. We've got,
No, I meant actually, I'm not authorized, actually, how many people are, if you counted heads today, how many folks would you have?
77.
77? And is that including the part-timers, or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, I also remind you that the treasurer's has a tech fund this year, and it's not shown in the budget, but it's a source of revenue for technology advancements.
Where's that come from?
That was pushed through the state legislature last year.
But where's the revenue come from?
When people file documents in Bill Meek's office, Kelly Arnold's got the same fund.
Oh, you get one too?
Yep.
So how
But
much,
I don't have enough in there to buy the QLIS or anything else right now.
Okay, how much do you have in there?
I don't know. 30,000 maybe, 25.
It has just taken effect. I don't know that there's anything.
It's just taken effect. I mean,
Oh, it took effect like January 1?
January 1.
Okay.
Okay, well, we ought to be able to find out how much is in there now. Maybe have a little projection of what it might bring.
Commissioner, if I might.
Yeah.
Just to keep you out of trouble. The statutes regarding those funds say explicitly that they are under the control of the various elected officials. The county has no ability to use those monies or to direct how those monies will be used.
Okay, I understand, but if that money's there, that might solve the QLIS function problem, right? I mean, if we knew it.
If the treasurer chooses to use it that way.
Well, I understand that. But, go back to the call center thing. So I want staff to. So how many call center people are there?
David?
I'm sorry, is it call center? There's a total of 15. 11 are on the tax side, which provides services to Linda, the election office, the appraiser's office, and then there's 4 that's on the ComCare side to provide answer calls for the ComCare line.
So is it accurate that other departments don't have to pay call center costs, and why the treasurers? I mean, do they represent a quarter of the calls basically, or?
I think I didn't know this was going to be a discussion point today.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I think about half of the calls that come into the call center are tag related, but I'll need to check that and verify for you. I guess the other point I would like to outline for you is the call center got established, like Linda outlined, back in 2007. And under Kathy Sexton, the intent was to consolidate in one place where the citizens could call to get information. And so as part of that consolidation, the tag office no longer received those calls, and they shifted over to the call center. So the intent was there was a savings in the tag office.
Right.
That's why they're essentially paying back the general fund for those services.
Okay. Now let me go back to the other horse and beat it a little bit more.
Okay.
So on the renewal services, right now, the state sends it out in the whatever, so many days in advance each month for each people. Now they're going to send a postcard. So you want to continue to send that out to everybody.
Primarily so people will know the dollar amount that they're going
Right.
to owe for budgeting purposes. A lot of people don't have extra money just laying around, and we'll have a lot more foot traffic with the postcard because people are going to come in the office, they're not going to call, they're not going to get online, they're going to show up at our door.
And then you could print one. Well, you'll have the stuff there.
We'll
You
have to
just
do it
work
right there, which will increase our customer walk-in traffic significantly.
But you'll have your QLIS system. So you'll
Probably
be
not by then, because the
well,
RFP isn't even out.
I'm just trying to figure out the flow and the rationale of different. But some people will. Maybe we need to try it out and see what happens. I don't know. I'm just thinking options. So, okay.
Okay. So when they get really gripey, I can give them your number?
No, you give them a 785 number. And then tell them to call their state representative and senator. Or Nick Jordan. I don't care. All right. I mean, I understand your concern, but if we're going to be concerned about it, well, then you need to try and do something about it, I think. But, you know, if you reward bad behavior, then you just get more bad behavior. So, any other questions?
I have one more. So you mentioned the the plan to move the inspection office to the K254 and Rock Road.
The Highway
location.
Patrol's plan? Yes.
Yeah, I understand that's their plan. I think that's obviously, I think it's a terrible decision for
I
the
don't
county.
like it either.
And it might be an economical decision for them. It's going to disservice our people pretty badly. So what can we do, or what are we doing to make that change?
I haven't gotten a solid date from Captain Martin yet on when that move is going to take place. He just said later this fall. I'll email him again and see if I can pinpoint some kind of a date so I can work with our communications office to get something out to the public.
At the least, I'd like to add this to a legislative platform to allow counties the option to collect those fees and provide another way of getting this done. I understand the Highway Patrol does this, but they're not officers. Is that correct? They're
non-commissioned. That's correct.
They're just staff
Yeah.
that seem to know that part of the job, and they access a computer that you guys already have access to.
They have
correct?
the Invitas. Invitas is not set up on the tag office system, but that's what they run through. Invitas, National VIN Service.
Well, it seems like a bureaucratic problem, and we need to, I think, drive towards a solution. So I think if legislation is required to get there, that ought to be on our platform. And I think that we ought to make sure that one of our goals is to get this returned back to where it is now, maybe even make it better. But this is a mistake for the state of Kansas, and I'd like to do what we can to stop it.
I agree with you.
Now, how many tag offices do they have people at now?
They have their main staff at 200 West Murdoch. On Tuesdays, they're at Derby and at Brittany. Tag office at 21st and Woodlawn. On Thursdays, they're at 21st and Mays. They send 2 people out to each of the substations on those days, and then the rest of their staff is at the main office. And they're open from 8:30 to 3.
And this is for vehicles that come in from out of state.
Yes, sir.
Before you can give them
Yes, sir.
a title.
If you buy a truck in Oklahoma,
Uh-huh.
you have to have that VIN inspected by the Kansas Highway Patrol before you can get a tag.
So the rebel in me has to ask this question:
Oh,
what
no.
happens if you just give them a title anyway?
We can't process your paperwork without that MVE1.
Do it anyway.
No,
What happens?
I don't look that good in orange. Sorry, I can wear a little, but not all.
Well, that's the question. Okay.
Let me add one more thing to this.
Yeah.
And again, I think ideally the service ought to be available at every tag office on every day, not by Highway Patrol necessarily. I think the solution ought to be we have certain staff in each location that has the skills to go out there and check a VIN. I think they check 3 places: the engine, the door, and the
Plate on
front
the-
by the windshield. So they're verifying the number matches the title. It's primarily bureaucratic. They know where to look. One of the complaints I heard was that they don't want to go out into the weather and deal with this, in the rain and stuff. Most of the time, it's not an issue in Kansas. We have wind, but we don't have such bad weather that you can't go outside and look under the hood for a number. But
Well, and they did have one of their employees hit in the Murdoch parking lot by another car. So I kind of understand their safety concerns there. I do. She wasn't hurt badly, but she was hit by a car. So I do understand their safety reasoning.
anyway, ideally, we'd have staff. It's at each office that would have the skills and abilities to do this. So people don't have to drive to a certain place on a certain date, on a certain. In fact, when I did this recently, I bought a car that needed an inspection, and actually, another story I won't get into right now, but needed the inspection, and it took 2 trips down to an office to get it done because we got there too late in the day and got in the wrong line. I don't know what all happened, but it was hours of frustration. And by the time we got to the time to get the inspection done, it wasn't able to get it all done in one day, and so it turned out to be a 2-day ordeal. It's just not good for the constituents to have to deal with this type of bureaucratic issue. I think we need to solve it. So whatever it takes, I'm a fan. I would argue at the state level, I would find people who are sympathetic to the issue, but let's go get it solved. And the answer right now that they're the only ones who can do it, only at one location, to me is not a good answer.
Okay. I don't run the highway patrol, so we'll have to work on it.
Not yet, but if the state keeps shifting stuff down, you might.
Oh, gosh. I don't know if they'd like that.
All right.
Anything else?
Linda would like electronic copy of.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Any other questions, Commissioners?
I think that's enough.
Okay, thank you, Linda. All right, Commissioners, our next presentation is Public Works, and David Spears is here. We will be on page 380 of your binders.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
380.
David Spears, Director of Public Works. Present the 16 budget. In Public Works, we consist of Highway Department, noxious weeds, storm drainage. Storm drainage includes stream maintenance, flood control, stormwater management, and then there's environmental resources, and they have also household hazardous waste. The Highway Department, basically we maintain roads and bridges in unincorporated Sedgwick County. We design road and bridge projects, and then we administer construction contracts in the capital improvement program, and this includes full-time inspection and testing. Changes and challenges. Our focus is to maintain existing roads and bridges. We're not really adding any major roads. Years ago, we built a lot of 4-lane roads, which we did that on roads that were high traffic volume, approaching 10,000 cars per day, and then they were mainly close to Wichita or other cities, and then were annexed. And these are very expensive type projects, so our focus now is to take care of what we have, and our preventive maintenance and pavement preservation are our top priority. So we try to do about 120 miles a year of maintenance on our roads to keep them, to extend the life of all our existing roads. The Noxious Weed Department, they control and eradicate noxious weeds on all property within Sedgwick County through direct and indirect means. Direct is what we do, indirect is what the public does. Direct control of noxious weeds on county-owned property and right-of-way. Vegetation management through chemical controls on county right-of-way. That means we spray a retardant in the ditches to try to keep the grass from growing so fast so we don't have to mow so often, and that works fairly well. And then we have contracts with KDOT to provide direct control of noxious weeds, which they pay us for. No changes on the weed department. Storm Drainage Department, we maintain certain natural streams with our stream maintenance folks. I think they do a great job on that. Regulate drainage and stormwater quality. And then we have regional drainage planning, the SMAB, or Stormwater Management Advisory Board. I think they had a meeting up at Valley Center yesterday about a deal. No changes there. Then the Environmental Resources Department, inspect transfer stations and C&D landfills weekly. Inspect and resolve illegal dumping problems. Implement and update Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Plan. Provide special solid waste projects for residents and businesses. Implement components of stormwater permit per KDHE. And provide environmental technical assistance and compliance for the county. And no changes there. HHW, we provide the drop-off services at the facility down on Stillwell. Provide a swap and shop. Provide 5 remote HHW collection events each year, and those are pretty popular. Work with businesses on hazardous waste disposal issues. and work with other government agencies on the proper disposal of illegally dumped hazardous waste. Some of the challenges we have, we're still trying to get a consensus of what to do about the storm debris fund, which was $480,000. The county is still going to incur costs with storms, and as they say, it's not if we have another bad storm, it's when. And something that's been mentioned is the possibility of adding anywhere from $100,000 to $480,000 to special projects to cover future storm-related expenses. So that's something that we need to decide, not necessarily today, but needs to be decided. Here's the summary. Basically, it's pretty much the same as the 16 budget. Highway Department, a little over $10 million. Weed Department, almost $500,000. Storm drainage, and you can see the breakdown of stream maintenance, flood control, stormwater management, which all adds up to the 1.6. And then environmental plus HHW 1.8, total 14.4. Be glad to try to answer any questions, and I have some very smart people here with me to help.
Could you send us electronic? Well, I think Lindsay's probably going to do that already, right?
Yes.
Never mind. All right, Commissioner Peter John.
Let me ask you, storm control, you had $1,048,000 and change for flood control. That's strictly the Wichita Valley Center, our half of the Wichita Valley Center flood.
That's our half. They'll match that. Wichita will match that number.
Okay, because I was thinking it was a round number, and there seemed to be I wasn't sure what the 48,000 and change happened to be, if there was something extra or new or different or what.
Anybody?
Yeah, I thought it was $500,000 a year.
Well, for the $1 million, we always refer to it as $1 million, but it's never been exactly $1 million. It maybe was $1,023,000. I think the $1,048,000 is just a carryover from the 15 budget, and what actually happens is our budget people and their budget people will look at their operation and they'll agree on a precise number. We could put $1 million in here, but it just carries over from the 15 budget. The $500,000 is a CIP project, D25, and that's money that is used for the heavier maintenance rehabilitation projects and things that were identified in the levy accreditation project. And so that's a place where we accumulate matching money. We put up $500,000, they put up $500,000, and then we'll go out and do, or they'll go out and do rehab projects. The next ones they're looking at, for example, are concrete. Concrete structures are 60 years old, so they're eroding and spalling away, so they need to be rehabilitated, some of the big structures. So, but that's something that'll come up in the CIP conversation. It's not something that gets reflected right in our budget.
Thanks, Jim.
Did you have something else, or that was good? Okay.
Further questions? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, we're slated to take a 10-minute break before we go into CIP, so I think you'll all want to take advantage of that. And so if we can reconvene at 2 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, we're 5 after, and 4 of us are here. I think we can get started.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, our next presentation is the Capital Improvement Program. That will be done jointly by Chris Cronus and David Spears. There's nothing in your binders related to this, but you should have a handout at your desk that looks like this that says Capital Improvement Program at the top. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Cronus.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have 57 slides to go over, and we've been allotted 45 minutes to do this presentation. So we're going to be going very fast. If you have questions, keep them to yourselves.
I've turned off Commissioner Peter John's light.
Thank you. What we're going to be talking about first is an overview of the CIP. What process did we use to develop the CIP? What is a summary of some of the highlights of things that you might not have seen before? Then I'm going to spend some time talking about the facility and drainage projects that are in the proposed CIP. Following that, David Spears will do the same thing regarding road and bridge projects that are in the proposed CIP. And then I'll wrap up by talking about how we propose to pay for the whole thing. Come on. We do a CIP very simply to identify capital needs for the various services that the county provides, to prioritize those needs, because inevitably there are more needs than there is funding. And we try and fit those needs within the resources that have been made available, or that we think will be made available for that purpose. And finally, an important role of the CIP is to communicate to your constituents what the county is proposing to do regarding infrastructure and county facilities, and how that will help the delivery of essential public services. The prioritization activity is done principally by the people that you see listed on this slide. This is a CIP committee that is established in county policy. The appointments excuse me, are made by the county manager, and the committee has been roughly the same for a number of years now, allowing for some changes in personnel in various positions. The real work of building the CIP is done by the people that are listed on this slide. Tanya Cole in Project Services takes the lead on developing and assembling the facility and drainage projects in the CIP. She is more than ably assisted by Lauren Showalter from the Budget Office, and Jim Weber takes the lead on developing the road and bridge portion of the CIP. We go through a request phase very early in the year. Actually, it starts at the end of the prior year, where departments and agencies throughout the government are asked to submit their requests for facility and drainage and infrastructure projects, including cost estimates and impact on future operations and justification for the project. Those project requests are received generally by the end of January. They are then assembled by the staff, and the CIP committee begins to review them, and to the extent appropriate and necessary, we hear presentations from the people who submitted the requests to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what the perceived needs are, so that when we prioritize the projects, we're doing so in an informed fashion. The prioritization phase entails the CIP committee looking at all of those projects, fitting them over a 5-year plan, over a 5-year period, and ranking each of the projects according to the 6 criteria that you see listed here. We go through a scoring process for each of the 6 criteria for each of the projects that has been requested. We add up all of the scores at the end of the process, and high score wins. That's the highest priority. And we sort the projects then along the time continuum, generally in accordance with the priorities that have been assigned to them. As we move through the funding phase, that is trying to match those projects and those priorities with available resources, it's sometimes necessary to shift projects forward or backward in time because of resource limitations. But we do that, and once that is completed, that revised CIP is resubmitted to the CIP committee to make sure that none of those adjustments that might have been made for funding reasons will cause operational concerns. For example, we are having all of the facilities projects managed by the project services staff, which I believe is 4 people. And we want to make sure that we don't inadvertently place more projects in 1 year than that staff has the capacity to manage. The proposed CIP, once it is finished, is presented to you in a workshop setting. That's what we're doing today. The purpose of the discussion today is simply to put on your radar the projects and the funding requirements for those projects that you are likely to see in the recommended budget when it's delivered to you in mid-July. That recommended budget and recommended CIP will have, almost certainly, will have some changes from what is presented to you today. This is a fluid process. We haven't yet heard from you about any of these projects. and some of the cost estimates continue to be adjusted as newer information becomes available to us. The adoption of the CIP then follows the same cycle of activity as the adoption of the budget. And so through the last half of July and into early August, you'll be conducting public hearings, and finally in mid-August you'll be adopting a budget and CIP. In summary, what is being proposed is a $229.7 million program over 5 years. You can see on this slide that $78.8 million of that total program is to be funded with cash. Most of that is dedicated sales tax for roads and bridges. $35.1 million is proposed to be funded with debt, and that includes some debt that is planned to be sold in 2016 to fund projects that you previously approved for activity to occur in 2015. And finally, $115.8 million of other people's money. Most of that is state and federal grant money that we expect to receive for the Kellogg I-235 interchange. So it all adds up to $229.7 million, $21.5 million of facility and drainage projects, $208.2 million of roads and bridges. The significant changes to the program include a new southeast EMS post. This would be somewhere in the vicinity of Derby, to the east of Derby and probably to the south of Derby. The estimated cost is just under $1.4 million. We also have a new project to replace the EMS post that's located in Park City on, I believe, 53rd Street North. You may recall that facility originally was constructed as a fire station. The fire district moved out of that station several years ago. EMS moved in, and that station is old, deteriorating. It is incurring increasingly high annual maintenance costs to take care of problems that exist in that facility. The replacement cost for that facility is estimated to be $1.45 million.
Hold on, Chris. You're telling me we can't do some work on that the only option is to replace the existing?
No, I'm not telling you that's the only option. I'm telling you that is the proposed option at this point.
I'd like to see some alternatives.
Okay.
And
the
maintenance costs that we're incurring at this point.
Okay. Another new project is at the Regional Forensic Science Center. The proposal is to add about 10,500 square feet of space to expand the DNA lab, and that in turn would alleviate other space limitations that exist within the facility. The total estimated cost of that project is just under $4.3 million. Outdoor warning devices are a recurring expense in the CIP, and they continue to be in this one at a total cost which is increased over what you've seen in the past of $540,000 over 5 years to replace existing sirens and related equipment, and to provide new installations as the community moves.
So that is all of that $540,000 new in addition? Because aren't we spending a certain amount each year already?
No, this is new and replacement of old.
I mean, is this funding in addition to what we already had programmed in? I thought we already had this programmed in.
As I said, it's programmed every year, and so you've seen this before. The costs associated with it have changed from what you saw in the last CIP. But generally, each year in the CIP, there is money programmed for this project.
Right. I guess I was trying to figure out how much of an increase cost is what I'm looking for.
My recollection is that in past years, we have programmed $100,000 a year for it. Now we are programming in the outer years of the 5-year program $110,000.
And on the Science Center, how many will that require any increased operational costs and the number of positions associated with that?
In and of itself, it will not require any increase in positions. Additional space obviously costs money to maintain, but because this is newer space, we don't expect that to be very significant. Now, the added space, however, I will say, will create options for the Regional Forensic Science Center to expand its staff that aren't available to the facility today because of the crowded conditions.
So I would like an analysis of the potential cost of those options, I guess. Okay, thanks.
At Sedgwick County Park, there is a new project to do stabilization work on the pond bank at the 21st Street entrance to the facility, and also to do paving of the roadway that is off to the east of the main road through the park. That will substantially improve the appearance of this very heavily used facility. It's not very attractive right now for those of you who've gone out in the 21st Street entrance recently. And it also will address severe silting in that pond. In Roads and Bridges, there is a new project excuse me, to replace a bridge on 215th Street West, north of 13th Street North. That is $1 million project. You see the traffic count and the sufficiency rating. There's a project to replace a bridge on hydraulic between 111th Street South and 119th South. That's a $2 million project. A bridge on 143rd Street East, north of Pawnee, is an $807,000 project. A bridge on 71st Street South between Webb and Greenwich is $1 million project, and you'll be hearing more about all of these new projects in just a few minutes. A bridge on 103rd Street South on the far west side is $546,000. A bridge on 199th Street West between Central and 13th Street North is $1.5 million. The cold mix and gravel road replacement program, sometimes referred to as the Super Seal program, has been added in accordance with the presentation that David Spears and Jim Weber gave you a while back. Over the 5-year period of this CIP, a total of $6.25 million has been allocated to that program that will allow for the replacement or paving of gravel roads to the tune of a total of 25 miles at 5 miles per year. And a multi-use path on Rock Road between Derby and Mulvane is added to the CIP at an estimated cost of $1.4 million. That project is 80% funded with federal money. So that's a summary of the major changes from the CIP that you approved last year in the summer. Now what I'd like to do is just walk you through in more detail, walk you through the facility and drainage portion of the CIP. You have previously approved these major projects to obtain activity in 2015, and to a greater or lesser extent that activity will carry over into 2016. So the work release security system upgrade has $728,000 in 2015 funding. The new EMS post you just recently approved the acquisition of land for this new northeast post at a cost of about $308,000. And there is an EMS garage facility to provide adequate space in which to house the extra ambulances, the surplus ambulances that are used in peak conditions, and to provide for service when mainline ambulances are in repair. That has been funded in 2015 at a little over $250,000. Both of those latter two projects have additional funding you'll see provided in 2016 in accordance with the plan that you approved this time last year. Another previously approved project for 2015 is a major drainage improvement southwest of Hayesville. That in total is about $2.5 million. It is in design right now. That project has been proposed to be funded with special assessments levied against the benefiting property owners. And we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks. For 2016 in the CIP, in this proposed CIP, we have a new southeast EMS post that I mentioned, just under $1.4 million. That would be funded with debt, according to this proposal. The Regional Forensic Science Center DNA lab addition is $4.3 million. That also would be funded with debt. At DIO, there is a proposal to remodel the second and third floors of the 3-story Munger building, the original county jail. That would be cash funded at a cost of about $334,000. At parks, we've already talked about the Sedgwick County Park, the Pond Bank Stabilization Project. That would be cash funded in 2016. At corrections, we have the PC replacement for the security system. That's $129,000 cash funded. We also have for adult field services video surveillance system, which is a new project at about $50,000 of cash funding. For 2017, we have the replacement of EMS Post 8, which I mentioned previously, just under $1.5 million. That would be debt funded. And for facilities, a project that has previously been in the CIP, the replacement of exterior joint sealant at the adult detention facility North Addition. That's about $163,000. And that, although that's not much money in and of itself, that would be debt funded as a part of a larger bond issue for jail projects that we'll be talking about in just a minute. There are no 2018, 19, or 20 projects in the proposed CIP, which is not to say that there isn't any activity to incur in those years, but the projects that do occur in those years also occur in other years, and so we refer to them as multi-year projects. Among them are the project for ADA compliance. Some years ago, the Commission approved a plan to bring county facilities into full compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The projects in the 2016 through 19 CIP cost an estimated $1.8 million, and they would be they'd be cash funded. We've already talked about the outdoor warning devices, $540,000 over 5 years. We have a plan to replace county parking lots on a regular cycle in accordance with the need of those lots. In this 5-year program, there are 3 parking lots, or 3 sets of parking lots that need to be replaced in 2016, 2018, and 2020. Total cost of those is estimated to be about $1.7 million, cash funded. A similar plan exists for the replacement of roofs on county facilities, and in this CIP, there are roofs to be replaced in every year except for 2019. The total cost is just under $1.9 million, and that also is cash funded. The EMS Northeast post that we mentioned previously is a total project cost of $1.4 million, of which $1.1 million is funding provided in 2016. The entire project would be debt funded with bonds to be sold in 2016. Similarly, the EMS garage facility that I mentioned earlier has a total project cost of $822,000, of which $564,000 is to be provided in 2016 and combined with funding that was previously provided for 2015. That also is to be a debt-funded project. The Adult Detention Center, I mentioned there were other larger projects, and these have been in the prior CIP. For 2016 and 2017, there are 2 fairly substantial projects at the Adult Detention Facility. First is a project to renovate and repurpose the first floor visitation area at the entrance to the Adult Detention Facility. That would allow the sheriff to move sheriff's deputies who are currently housed in this building over to the Adult Detention Facility, and it would free up space in this building. The cost of the project in the Adult Detention Facility and the renovation of space in this building is estimated to be $1.8 million. That would be a debt-funded project. The second major jail project is an addition of space, a 2-story addition of space that similarly would allow the sheriff to consolidate deputies who are currently spread throughout this building into the adult detention facility. It would free up space in this building. Total estimated cost is about $3.1 million. That would occur in 2016 and 2017. It also would be debt funded. We have what we call a watch list for facilities projects. These are projects that are on our radar as something that we think either is likely to be needed over the next 5 years or that we know will be needed, but we don't yet have enough information about it to actually program it in the CIP. And so we have the project that you see listed here on the watch list. For the county commission, it has been suggested that a new meeting room that would allow for more space for citizens is required, and with the sheriff moving off of the third floor because of those jail projects, that provides an option for us to entertain that project. But at this point, that project hasn't been scoped out. I don't believe you've even been talked to about it yet, at least not much. And so we don't know costs, we don't know timing, and so that's why it's on the watch list.
You're talking about the law enforcement training center?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
That was the county commission meeting room.
Oh, got it. Okay.
At Lake Afton Park, there has been a project to construct a new shelter 3. That project costs, I believe, about $500,000, close to that anyway, and it has been pushed back repeatedly in the CIP because it's considered to be a relatively low priority. Now it has been pushed back so far that it's on the watch list rather than in the 5-year plan. Law Enforcement Training Center, you know that a variety of options are currently under consideration. They all have different considerations involved with them. They all have different cost estimates associated with them. None of that has been refined. A decision hasn't been made about whether we want to do a project, and if so, where we want to do the project and how much it's going to cost. And so for that reason, it is in the watch list right now. As you saw,
but Chris, I thought there was money in next year.
As you saw when we gave you the financial forecast, for forecasting purposes, we have incorporated $3 million of expenditure for 2016, mainly as a placeholder. We don't yet know if that's the right number. We don't yet know if that's the year it'll be spent, and we certainly don't know where it will be spent. For JRBR, you have directed us to include funding to reopen the facility. You know that we have talked about the need to actually replace that facility. The replacement is on the watch list. As an alternative to the replacement, we have said that the minimum requirements to reopen the facility are estimated to cost about $3 million and consist of 2 projects, one for replacement of the HVAC system, the other for replacement of a sewer line, and those, along with the option of a new facility, constitute this watch list item. There has been a proposal to replace EMS Post 1, which is the post that is located on Central at McLean in what used to be called Riverside Hospital. That space has been given to us or lent to us at no cost by Via Christi, which owns that facility. There has been concern voiced that Via Christi may be coming up with alternative plans for that facility, which would require us to move out. We haven't yet received notice of that. There also have been concerns expressed that the garage that exists at that facility that we're using is now too short for the ambulances that we are currently buying. And so it's difficult to get an ambulance in that garage and get the door shut. And so for that reason, the Public Safety Department has suggested that we consider replacing that facility. Because we haven't received notice from Via Christi or any indication that they intend to give us notice, because we can still just barely get the ambulances in the garage, we have elected to put this project on the watch list until it becomes more fully fleshed out. We've talked about the need potentially for a new county administration building. That is on the watch list. That's about a $33 million project. In the Public Works presentation, Jim Weber was talking about the $500,000 a year that we have been setting aside for repair and remediation work on the big ditch associated with the floodplain certification program. We have provided a total of $1 million, set aside a total of $1 million for that purpose over the past couple of years. That program is to be managed by the city. The city, to date, has not spent any of that money and hasn't come up with a plan to spend any of that money. The CIP that you approved a year ago had an additional $1 million at the rate of $500,000 per year included in 2016 and 2017. Because of the uncertainty about what the city's plans are, we have elected now to put that project on the watch list so that if the city comes up with a plan that everybody can agree with and that money is required, we can amend the CIP to put it back in. That concludes the facilities and drainage portion of the presentation. David, after Jim finishes telling him what he's going to say, David will come up and give the road and bridge piece.
No, you told me you forgot to talk about the salt dome.
I did. Thank you. One project that has been in the CIP for action in 2016 is what is referred to as the salt dome at the north yard of the Public Works Maintenance Facility off of 45th Street north of Jabara Airport. That project is $325,000. It was to be cash funded in 2016. The reason that you don't see it in this CIP is that during the windstorm that we suffered through a month or so ago, that facility suffered damage. And it doesn't make sense to us to spend money to repair that facility just to tear it down a year from now and replace it. And so what will be happening is that you will see in the coming weeks a CIP amendment brought forward to you to move that project from 2016 to 2015 so that we can go ahead and get it done this year and in the long term save some money by not having to repair a building that we're going to be tearing down. Now, David.
David Spears again. I'll go through our slides rather quickly. Jim Weber passed out this one sheet. This what's pretty nice. After all the dust settles today and next week or in the future you have a question, is this or that project in the CIP, they're all on this one piece of paper right here. So keep that handy or call us if you have a question about a project. Okay, as I said earlier, we continue with the primary focus on preventive maintenance projects for roads. Pavement preservation is our main thing, and you'll see that with the money allocated too. We are directing considerable resources toward bridge replacement and maintenance. We have some decks we're going to redo instead of total replacement on some large bridges. And I think you've heard me talk about 40 under 50, meaning 40 bridges under sufficiency rating 50. If you're under the sufficiency rating 50, and you saw the ones Chris had earlier, all of them I think were under 50. The rule is you need to replace them. They're that bad. So, but in general, you know, we have like 500, I think it's 582 now. 83% of our bridges our average sufficiency rating of all the bridges is 83%, 83 out of 100. That's really good. But what our problem is the 40 under 50. So those we're getting in the CIP to get replaced, and so that's what we're focusing on. We've established a program to pave the coal mix and gravel roads, which is the Super Seal program. And then also the other big thing is the interchange at I-235 and Kellogg, which is $11.6 million over 3 years. So previously approved 15 projects, 183rd between 23rd and 39th. It's all these are multi-year. The aviation pathway, and we're getting 80% federal funds for that, and also Derby on the matching share with the 20%. They'll pay 10, and we'll pay 10, and that'll be a nice project. South Area Parkway study, which is down at 95th Street South and K15, which was there was a big study area with Mulvane representatives, Derby, Wichita. And we were there also, and looking at another crossing of the Arkansas River at 95th Street. So the first thing that's got to be done is a study to see what needs to be done. Bridge at 53rd between 247th, 263rd. Bridge on Broadway between 117th and 125th, and then a redecking. This is a pretty big bridge down on MacArthur at the big Arkansas River. That's down by the industrial area there. Okay, 2016, B466, 71st Street South between 247th and 263rd. Then we have one on 135th between 21st and 29th Street North. One down on Clifton near Oaklawn between 55th and 63rd. Pawnee between 127th and 143rd. Then another on Pawnee between 143rd and 159th East. Another bridge redeck on 151st between 77th and 85th, and then 93rd Street North between Meridian and Seneca. Oh, that is the road. That's the road out by the Valley Center School, and that's going to be won't be a super seal, be a super slurry, and then plus we're going to put concrete on top of that. B467 MacArthur between 327th and 343rd. Then another bridge 53rd between 231st and 247th. Still, we're in 2017 now. Bridge redeck on hydraulic between 69th and 77th North. A lot of times these decks go bad because of the salt. The substructure's still good, but a lot of times the deck's bad. And we've had those studied by consultants, so we know, and we put a lot of thought into it. You just do the deck, you do the whole bridge, and so it's been set up what we think is a proper way to do it. Here again, this is the South Area Parkway, the 95th Street I was talking about. This $1 million is just for design. We don't have a price in yet for construction because we don't know. First, there's going to be a study and then design, and then we'll move on from there. All right, multi-year utility relocation right away, $1 million. We put that in as miscellaneous, those things that come up with projects. Now, here's the big item, the big ticket is the preventive maintenance that we do. And we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, as you all know. We have Cutler repaving, we have NovaChip, we have Super Seal. So there's a lot of things that we can do to roads to have pavement preservation and extend the life of them. We have roads now that we built in the 80s that are just as good today as they were then. Special bridge inspection and engineering services, that can include looking at having consultants look at bridges to help us determine can we just redo the deck or do we have to do the whole thing. We've had them look at bridges to add on like sidewalks and paths. We had one down on Meridian that way. Then we have bridge design for off-system federal funding. Miscellaneous drainage, every year we have many structures that go bad, smaller ones we're talking about here. And so we have about $500,000 each year. One year has $550,000, I think, to just replace things that go bad that we know are going to go bad, but we don't know exactly where they're at right now. But we have so many structures, and I'm talking about thousands of structures out there that can go bad. So that's just miscellaneous, and we generally use up all that money each year, about the $500,000. Then one of the few road projects we have in the CIP, 183rd between 23rd and 39th, and we're going to try to use a super slurry on that with concrete. And we've got some tree problems there on each side of that. It's a very narrow road, but the people want to save the trees, so it's going to be quite the challenge for us. Traffic control, maintenance and construction, mainly that's striping and that sort of thing over the years. Then there is the interchange, I-235 US 54. That's the total price of it. Our share is the 10% of that, which is $11.6 million over 3 years. Multi-year projects, there's another bridge on MacArthur between 327th, 343rd. Bridge on 295th between 45th and 53rd North. Broadway between 117th and 125th. And then B475, a bridge on 295th between 93rd and 101st North. And then there's one on 95th Street South between 151st West and 167th West. Here again, we inspect all of our bridges every other year. Practically, when you stop inspecting, you almost have to start again almost immediately. We have so many. But we are in total compliance with the state and feds. They're all on the computer and done with the program that is provided by KDOT. And I think you'll see a resolution coming up here on the 10th of June about the weight limits of all the bridges, which will be in compliance with the inspections that we've done. So there you see MacArthur, bridge redeck on MacArthur over the Big Arkansas River, then B484, 95th Street South between Broadway and the Kansas Turnpike Authority. Then a bridge 151st over the Nenaskaw, $6.5 million. Then the R342, that is the Super Seal program for 5 years. The multi-use path on Rock Road from Derby to Mulvane, we've been working with them on this project. We are also going to try to get federal funds for that. Then bridge 215th Street West between 13th and 21st. Bridge on hydraulic between 11th and 119th. Then one on 143rd between Harry and Pawnee. 71st Street South between Webb and Greenwich, $1 million. 103rd Street South between 103rd Street West, which is Mays Road, and 119th Street West. Then bridge on 199th between Central and 13th, $1.5 million. And that's it. Takes quite a while just to say them all. It's not to mention you have to construct them.
Hey, Chris, can we get something similar to this PDF or Excel file that lists the facilities portion of this and highlights the proposed additions? Commissioner.
Thank you. David?
Yes, sir.
Looks like you did a lot of prioritization and planning. How many of these projects were in District 1?
There aren't any. No, I don't. I haven't.
There aren't any.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
There aren't any.
There will be pavement preservation projects in your district.
That's because we spend so much money in that
In a 5-year
district.
program, there's no roads in District 1,
You-
no bridges in District 1 that need any help.
How soon we forget the widening of Central, 13th and 21st, all the way from Wichita to the county line,
And that started in the year
multi-million-dollar
2000.
projects.
That's 3 5-year programs away. I mean, that's 3 5-year programs in history. They started in 2000 with Central. But I mean, it's just, I'm serious. There's none in District 1 that, in 5 years, that need any help.
Well,
They're all in such good shape.
Dave, how much money did we spend to do those 2 roads in Bel Air?
Oh.
53rd Street?
Was that
For the industrial
was that
park.
$4 or $5 million? 3, 4, something? I don't know.
For what?
45th and 53rd up by Bel Air.
Yeah.
Those miles for the industrial park.
That's true.
That should have been done by Bel Air, but nevertheless, that's another discussion for another day.
That was one of those good projects that's really developing the industrial park up there.
Well, there's where all the money went.
Well, you can include your EMS station, Dave.
Pardon me?
The EMS station.
That's not a road or a bridge.
That's a facility, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not a-
Doesn't it count? It's in District 1.
But there's lots of preventive maintenance projects. All the roads in your district that are ours will get preventive maintenance on them. And that's part of that 48 million. So you can be assured of that. That's our focus.
Okay.
Dave, maybe you want to move to District 3 because, in case you don't know it, there's more bridges and roads and
I've
land
heard
mass
that.
there
I've
than
heard that.
than just about all the other commissioners combined. So,
Well, it's just.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's just a 5-year project. It's a 5-year plan. It's like, well, that's.
Commissioner Norton.
Dave, where does the Meridian pedestrian bridge fall in? I thought, is it getting built right now?
It's in, Jim, do you know the year on it? Oh.
That's a little bit complex. We initially had the bridge repair on the vehicular bridge and the pedestrian bridge tied together. We have been able to get federal funding allocated through WAMPO for the pedestrian bridge, but it's out, I think, in 17 now. So we're proceeding with the bridge repair on the vehicular bridge, but the pedestrian bridge will come. You know, it's 80-20 funding. So we're trying to follow the WAMPO schedule. I think it's in 17 right now.
Okay, but it won't show up in our CIP?
It shows up in a B462, I think, which is a 2015 project. So there's money allocated in 15 that's for that project, but it doesn't keep re-showing up because the money's we're already holding the money, our part of the money.
It's listed with the bridge.
So it's listed with the bridge, but because it's right. So it hasn't gone away. It's just that we're not going to build it until we have to do it when the federal money comes up. So it's in a holding pattern at the moment. But
I just didn't see it as in any of those projects for either 15 or beyond.
yeah, you would see it in the TIP, in the WAMPO TIP, as because they're showing where the federal money comes from. So it's timed. That part will be timed with the federal money.
Okay, but it doesn't show up anywhere in our CIP then.
It shows up in 15.
The B,
In 2015, I think it's B462 or 464, but it shows up in 2015, but it's not going to show up in this book because the money is 15 money and it's going to be held there until we're ready to spend it in 17.
and this book is 16 to 20.
I thought I saw a bunch of slides that had 2015 or.
Well, those are Chris's slides. He likes to show 15 projects, but the book doesn't go back. He's behind me. I got to be careful, but
Bottom line, Commissioner, it's in. It's in.
Okay.
It's going to happen.
Trust and verify. Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Peter John.
Well, let me ask a question, Dave, based on the numbers we had today. When we were talking super seal in front of the bid board this morning, we had 4 miles of road, and I was thinking when we kind of deconstructed the costs, we were at roughly about $300,000 for each mile, 2 lanes. If that's the case, we've got budgeted here about $250,000 per mile for 2 lanes on super seal, and I wondered, are you expecting a reduction in the future? That doesn't seem to be the way most of the other projects going forward seem to go.
We try to keep track. Jim, you may want to address that also, but I think the pure cost on that was $177,000 per mile. That's the pure cost of if you're trying to just look at the super seal, was that. Then we had added on to there the fog seal, which was called an HA5, and the striping. And then we also, with all of that, put in fog seal. What the balance of that was fog seal or HA5 for other projects that we have in the county, which we wanted to bid that all as one. But we are cognizant of how the prices go up, especially when there's one contractor, Andale, and we will have to keep adjusting so that we have enough money to do these.
Well, I was thinking it was about 277 with Andale.
277, not 177 for the Andale
Yeah,
part.
277.
Oh, I'm sorry.
277 was what I was thinking, and
Sorry,
sounds
my,
like
my
Jim-
mistake.
Jim's, and if I add in those extra costs, I'm closer to 300,000 per mile.
Let me take a step. We put this together before that bid came in.
Okay.
And so we have, our engineering people are talking to the contractor, and we're trying to figure out if this is some kind of an anomaly or if this is actually a trend. And, if we determine that this really is the trend, it's really headed that way, we might be coming back to talking to Chris before this gets finalized to make an adjustment, at least in the 2016 numbers. But it was set up for $250,000 a mile. So if it really is trending that way, and what we're having to look at is the dirt work that's involved in the projects and so on. So we have people piecing this apart really right now, trying to verify what's going on. But
They were like 200,000 miles last year for 5
Right.
miles. Yeah, last year, Commissioner, they were 200,000 a mile for 5 miles or $1 million. So yes, it's bumped up to 277 a mile. But we added the micro cracking into that this year. That's an additional item that wasn't in the last ones.
No,
That's to keep them
understood,
from
and
cracking.
That's why I was using 300,000, but when I saw what you'd budgeted here going forward, now I understand in terms of the timing side. Our 274, 183rd Street West, that's a couple miles, I believe, from 23rd Street South to 39th Street South. We've got it covered under 2 years, and I think the 2-year cost, add it all together, is about $2.4 million. And it's a super slurry versus super seal, and I'm sitting there for 2 miles of road. I know the problem in terms of the trees and everything with it, but
It'd probably be more, instead of the super seal, we'll do the super slurry, which is Andale's, and probably put concrete on top of it. That's what we're talking about there, which bumps up the cost. Not the seal, instead of the seal on top, we'll do the concrete on top.
okay, because I'm just looking at
That's why it's more expensive.
well, quite a bit more expensive, and that was one of the areas where I was, trying to understand in terms of if there was something, trying to figure out ways to get a bigger bang for the buck.
slides. So let me help a little bit. Part of the confusion is that Chris pulled up the 2015 slides where you saw $2 million.
Okay.
And we're actually saying it's more like whatever million or a little bit over $1 million. But when we're showing you a 2015 slide with one set of numbers, and we've adjusted our cost down to $1 million something. That's what we think the actual cost is. But I think the combination of the slides is confusing things.
Okay, well, I'm looking here. It's at 2015, 2016. Had the 16 cost of $1,142,000. Add the other cost of $1,242,000. So it's one or the other, not both.
Right.
Not added.
It's the $1 million number is what
Okay.
we're looking to have included in the 2016 CIP.
Well,
And because it showed up in the 15 book with the higher number, I think we just have, our intent is to have that be whatever million, whatever it is.
Okay, $1,142,000.
Yes.
Well,
Which is it's higher than the super seal, but it's because, as Dave says, we're doing a super seal. We need to do the concrete pavement on top of it. We got trees. We got a lot of things to deal with.
A lot of problems.
well, I was trying to get that reconciled with the single sheet here.
If you recall, we were going to do now just coming back to a complete recondition of that road, starting from scratch. That's where the high number was, and then we came back and decided after, with the trees and all, to go back with the super slurry plus the concrete on top.
Okay. I think that's all I've got on the roads. Thank you.
See any other
Chris
slides?
needed to wrap up this.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have some questions, so I get brought up to speed on a couple things. What is the pathway between Derby and Mulvane? Can you explain that multi-use pathway? What's that going to look like?
It's basically a multi-use pathway for bicycles, jogging, and people walking, that sort of thing.
Okay. I noticed on the South Area Parkway, there's $1 million in 18 on the detailed sheet you gave us.
That's for design.
That's for the engineering, the design.
Design.
And there's
Then there's
500
$500 for the study.
Okay, so that's happening now. The study's happening.
No, it's going to happen this year, but it hasn't started yet.
So that's already funded, though. That's 500,000 this year.
We've got the 500, yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. So projects that go on the CIP plan, do they come off also? Sometimes you find out they're just not as, other things are maybe more important, and you guys prioritize things in that list, or?
It can change. A lot of times we have CIP amendments to change something.
Okay.
You'll see them come before the commission. Sometimes they're on a consent agenda, sometimes they're regular.
I think this is your thing as well. Can you talk about the ADA compliance? What is that all about on slide 26?
The ADA compliance?
ADA compliance. Was that your part, or was that Chris's part? I forget who was who. Okay.
The Americans for Disabilities Act sets standards for public facilities. Many of our existing facilities are not in compliance. We are not required immediately to put those in compliance, but we are required to have a plan and implement a plan to bring them into compliance within a reasonable period of time. Several years ago, the commissioners commissioned an analysis that laid out, that defined all of those improvements that were required for facilities owned by Sedgwick County. It classified those projects as either low priority, medium priority, or high priority. It assigned costs to each of those projects. The Commission approved that plan, and ever since then, those projects have been placed into the CIP as the CIP has evolved. First, the high priority projects were undertaken, then the medium, and I believe, if Steve Clausen is in the room, we are now in the low priority section. We are nearing completion, and I believe in this 5-year CIP we will complete the full implementation of that plan that was adopted some years ago by the County Commission.
Okay. All right, thank you.
One last question for Dave. The Northeast Expressway right-of-way, is that in here somewhere? Did I miss that, or is that a different?
Well, that's a good
Northwest is
one. This is the last year.
Northwest, sorry.
I knew what you meant. This is the last year of our agreement with KDOT for the right-of-way, and they came down and visited with us a couple of months ago, and their funding situation is not good right now, and so they're trying to figure out how much, if any, more money they'll have next year to do it. But they're telling us, at best, it won't be a 2-to-1 deal anymore where they put up $2 for every one of ours. It'll be equal, 1-to-1. So we didn't put anything in. We would like to continue with the program, but it's, I think there's a lot of question marks in Topeka right now.
I think you need to keep it in there at the very least for a placeholder. I think we need to continue doing that, but
well, it is
have some discussion with the legislators then.
We have a protective overlay over that entire route where no one can build in there.
No, I understand, but if you don't, okay.
Right.
That answers the question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Peter John.
Yeah, actually this is for Chris, not for Dave, if I could. Let me jump in, and maybe it's actually more for Dr. Rohrig. I noticed the square footage cost for that proposed building expansion and the Regional Forensic Science Center was a little bit over $400 per square foot, and that seems awfully high to me. Is there some unusual features that are going to add to that? That type of price tag for the amount of square footage?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Commissioner. A couple things. One, using just that $400 square foot figure, that is somewhat consistent with high technology laboratories. However, that total figure also includes about $1 million worth of equipment that is part and parcel to that project. So the actual general construction square footage drops down significantly. Doing quick math here, closer to $200-300 a square foot. So we're adding in specialized hoods, some high density filing, some special lighting that one would not normally factor into a normal construction project. So if you compare it to just office space construction, yes, it is significantly higher, but the electrical requirements, the HVAC requirements, the plumbing requirements do drive up the cost of that square footage. And that's somewhat consistent with some other laboratory projects that have occurred in the state recently.
Okay, well, I know obviously the state's got that KBI lab up at Washburn that probably is the closest comparable project that I can think of. But, yeah, if you can, I'd be interested in having a better understanding in terms of breaking it out, because that just seemed awfully expensive on a per square foot basis. And obviously if there's some specialized aspect of it, but if you're talking about also acquiring equipment as part of that proposal, I just wanted to get a better understanding.
Yes, we can provide that for you. And Johnson County had a similar project, and again, their square footage was quite similar as well, as far as cost per square foot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question for Chris, or maybe it's more for probably Steve. The remodel on the Munger buildings, how many square feet are we talking about for that remodel?
I'd have to look that up and provide that for you.
Okay. Well, on the parks equation for 2016, on the removing the silt and bank stabilization and paving, is there a way of getting those costs broken down at all? I mean, how much we're talking about for the road and the entrance versus, I mean, I don't know what silting.
Yes, we can provide that.
You know, what we're looking at there, Steve?
That kind of information is going to be in your CIP book. We can provide it for you now because we've got that, so I'm happy to provide it. It's in the CIP documents currently, so it'll break out what the paving cost is relative to the reestablishment of the banks and the silt removal.
So it would be in our 2015 budget?
2006. No, it's in the 2000. This is a 2016 project, so you haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
But we have the documents, is my point, and I'd be happy to provide that in advance for you.
Okay. On the drainage improvement southwest of Hayesville, it says debt service allocated to property owners via special assessment. So 100% of that cost is through special assessment?
That was the proposal, yes.
Just I want to make sure that that's how it's going to be paid for?
Well, it requires commission action to make that happen, but yes, that was
okay.
that was the staff recommendation.
Okay. That's all I have.
Commissioner Howell?
Well, thank you. Chris, I was just curious on slide 12, you mentioned the replacement of new installations for the outdoor warning devices. Are there places in the county right now that you can't hear the warning sirens? Is that? You say new locations. I guess I can understand updating, but I'm just a little surprised there'd be places in the county that you would not be able to hear those sirens right now.
What the emergency management guys will do is they'll look at the map of the county, look where the new construction is, and determine whether they need to have a new siren in that area or not.
So are there places right now that they can't? There's places in the county that are just not able to be heard. Sure. There are. Okay. How many locations are we talking about for new on this CIP?
We have 147 sirens total, and we're looking at 5 a year.
Okay.
That windstorm that went through a month or so ago that took out our EMS station also blew down 2 of the sirens, and they weren't quite scheduled yet, so they moved up to the head of the line.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
We're going to be chasing out for many years.
Chris, one more thing on slide 10. You went through that chart fast enough that I kind of got lost in the weeds there, and you said a couple things I wanted to just capture again. So, would you just explain slide 10 again for me? Would you mind doing that for me?
Sure.
Go through that. Thank you.
What you're looking at here is a summary of the total cost of the proposed CIP, and it's sorted according to the source of funds, along the left-hand side, and according to the type of project being funded along the top. The total amount of facilities and drainage projects included in the 5-year CIP amounts to about $21.5 million. That includes, as I said earlier and as the footnote says, that includes some debt that is to be issued for in 2016 for projects that were initiated in 2015, and so the costs don't appear in this program because they've already been incurred. There are $208 million worth of road projects. The total 5-year CIP for all projects is $229.7 million. That $229.7 million would be funded, under this proposal, would be funded with $78.8 million of cash. 72 million of that would come from the sales tax, the 50% of sales tax that is dedicated to road projects. $6.7 million of the cash would come from general revenues in the county's general fund that would be transferred to pay for capital projects. A total of $35.1 million of the funding would come from bonds to be issued over the 5-year period, and a total of $115.8 million would come from a variety of sources outside Sedgwick County. Most of that is funding provided to Sedgwick County for the I-235 Kellogg interchange, but it also includes money that we expect to receive from Derby for that path between Derby and Mulvane, from Derby for the aviation pathway project. I believe there's some Mulvane money in the Derby Mulvane path as well, and other lesser amounts of other people's money that would be contributed to us to pay for these projects.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you both very much.
Okay.
We're ready for the next one.
I'm not Lindsay, but the next is Chris Cronus, Division of Finance and Economic Development.
Christy?
Just listen to what he says.
We ready?
Yes.
Okay. We now are going to be spending the next few minutes talking about the budget proposal for the Finance Division. And so this is operating budget material, unlike the CIP that we just discussed. Now, this wasn't like this just a few minutes ago when we called it up. In your handout, you have a pie chart that actually has numbers and text, where here it says cell range and category and so forth, and I apologize for that. But the point that I wanted to make is that the Finance Division is responsible for far more of the county budget than just the Finance Division operating budget. In fact, what you pay to operate the Finance Division amounts to about 10% of the total funding responsibility that I'm going to be discussing over the next few minutes. Other elements of the presentation will include the county's budget for debt service, which is about $20 million, the budget for economic development, which is about $9.5 million, the budget for transfers, which is $1.6 million, the budget for reserves, which is just under $24 million, the budget for WSU, which is $7.7 million, the budget for WATC, which is just under $1 million, and finally the budget of the Finance Division itself, which is just under $7 million. Our total budgetary responsibility is something north of $71 million in this budget proposal. As you have seen in other presentations that have come to you, I'm going to first talk about the Finance Division itself, our mission, what departments we have, what our core services are, what other services we provide, and what is proposed to be budgeted for each of those operations. And then I'll follow that by talking about the proposed budgets for these other functions that I mentioned. The Finance Division is shown on this chart, and as CFO, I have ultimate supervisory responsibility for everything on this chart, but when we talk about the Finance Division, we are talking about the boxes that are within the dotted line. In addition to those, the 4 departments of finance, accounting, budget, purchasing, and risk management, I have supervisory responsibility for economic development. The total requested budget for finance is just under $7 million. That is virtually the same as the current year budget, and our budget is funded roughly equally by the county's general fund and by the county's risk management funds. And so you can see that the general fund expenditures are $3.7 million in the proposed budget, slightly less than current year, but the request doesn't yet include the personnel adjustments that will be made eventually by the budget staff regarding pay plan adjustments. We have a total of 34 employees authorized for finance, and as of today, we have 1 vacancy and a second one that will be vacated, a second position that will be vacated at the end of this week. The Finance Division's mission you see on this page, I've already mentioned the 4 departments that exist within finance. In addition to those, there is a budget for the CFO's office. Within the CFO's office, the core responsibilities are, of course, to manage the division, to provide oversight for the Finance Division and those other services that finance is responsible for, and to obtain the audit that is required by state law and that you expect every year. Other services that we provide that I would not consider to be core services, which is not to say they're not important, are tax system oversight. The property tax system, as you know, is administered by a hodgepodge of various county departments, and so what we do in finance, since we are responsible for managing the resources that result from that system, what we do is try and provide some coordination of those disparate offices that are involved in property tax administration. And the other service that we provide is strategic financial planning. The key measures of success I think, for the CFO's office are what you see here. It's the county's bond ratings, AAA across the board. In addition, the financial management assessment, the special criteria that is applied to bond issuers by Standard & Poor's, specifically addressing the quality of financial management. And for that, we have an assessment of strong, which is the highest that's available. The mission of the budget office is to allocate resources in accordance with your priorities while maintaining long-term financial health. And I want to emphasize that. It is not merely to administer the budget, but rather to administer the budget with an eye at all times on the long-term implications of current activities. The core service of the budget office, the one thing that they do that is statutorily required, is preparation of a certified budget that is submitted to the county clerk each year once you have adopted the budget. Additional services provided by the budget office
are financial and program analysis and budget administration. And I should have said at the outset that as I'm going through this presentation, what I'm identifying here as core services and other services are the programs that are listed in the program inventory documents that I believe you've seen for finance and for the other operations of the county. Those, my methodology of assigning priorities to services is first to give highest priority to the transactional services that finance performs. Much of what we do in finance is mandated by state, either it's mandated by state law or federal law or grant regulations, or if the service itself is not mandated, if we choose to perform the service, there is a federal or state law or a regulation that mandates how we provide that service. And so those transactional kinds of services I consider to be the essential things, the things that we have to do. The less essential activities, the lower priority activities, are the knowledge management, if you will. In finance, we perform transactions and we provide information so that people can make informed decisions. We have to do the transactions. We don't have to provide the information, although certainly it would be much more difficult to run the government without that information. But that's the approach that I took to prioritizing finance services, and that's what you'll see as I move through this, talking about core services versus other services. In the budget office, the key measures of success are the number of funds that are below the minimum fund balance targets that have been set in county policy, currently none, which is what we want to see, and the price of government. This is a concept that you may be unfamiliar with, but the price of government, according to an analyst who wrote a book some years ago, is the amount of money that we take out of local residents' pockets, regardless of how we get it, whether it's taxes or fees or fines. Any money that we collect locally from any source that we have discretion over is considered a part of the price of government. And the measure relates that money to the personal income in the community. And what the analyst found, looking over time at a lot of different governments, is that within any given government, there is some level of price of government, some measure of price of government, that is considered to be tolerable by those constituents. If you rise too much above that level, you start to see unrest in the populace. If you fall too far below that level, you start to see unrest among the citizens because the quality of services or the level of services that are being provided aren't what the community expects. What you see on the chart is the county's price of government as far back as 1990. It currently stands at 1.1 cent per dollar of personal income in Sedgwick County. And you can see from the chart that over this past 24 years, we have been within a very narrow range consistently year after year. Whether we increased property taxes or reduced property taxes, whether we increased the sales tax as we did with the voter-approved sales tax for a few years, or whether that tax went off, the aggregate amount of money that we collected from citizens in relation to personal income has stayed roughly the same at between 1.1 and 1.4 cents per dollar of income. Now, I have taken this chart as far back as the early 1970s, and you see the same pattern even going back that far, with the exception of a brief period of time in the mid-'80s when, for some reason, the county's price of government dropped to below 1 cent. It's the only time that it's ever happened. It only happened for a few years. I wasn't here at the time, so I can't explain why that happened or why it returned to the norm level of about 1.1 cents, 1.2 cents, but it did, and it has stayed at that level ever since. And so this suggests to me that the folks in the budget office who are responsible for allocating resources are doing a pretty good job of keeping the county's requirements for funding at a level that is is considered to be acceptable by our citizens. The accounting department operates a series of services that are transactional in nature and therefore I consider to be core services. Payroll, accounts payable, general accounting, preparing the financial statements that ultimately have to be audited, banking services, managing all of the cash that the county is responsible for, investing that cash and managing the debt that is necessary to fund some projects. All of those are core services of accounting. Other services that accounting does are accounts receivable and grants management. The key measures of success for finance are the number of audit findings. You receive a report from the auditors every year that identifies deficiencies, if any are found. In the most recent audit report that you received, there were no findings from the auditor. That's what we want to see. Frankly, that is not what is common. Typically, you will find 1 or 2 or 3 findings in every audit. I'm very proud of the fact that the work of our finance division has generated no audit findings. Investment returns to benchmark. We have a policy that says what rate of return we are to shoot for while maintaining safety and liquidity of the county's cash. We currently exceed that benchmark by more than 2.5 times. The time that it takes us to pay vendors after we receive a valid invoice from those vendors is an important measure of success of accounting. We believe because many of the county's vendors are small local businesses for whom cash flow is a critical issue, that it's appropriate for us to pay those vendors as quickly as we can, not as people in my business often suggest to hold on to our cash as long as we can before we pay the vendors. And so, as you can see, we have, over the past year, paid vendors on average within less than 5 days from the day we receive a valid invoice. Another measure of performance by the accounting division is the number of payments issued. And this counts both payroll payments and accounts payable payments. And you see that over the course of a year, we issue something on the order of 55,000 payments from our accounting department. And that has been relatively constant over the past 10 years. It is somewhat declining now because of the work that has been done through the acquisition and implementation of the new purchasing system that allows us to obtain annual contracts so that we can do more bulk purchasing than we were able to do formerly. And the purchasing department is responsible for doing all of the most of the procurement activity of the county. And the core services that they do is prepare and issue requests for goods and services and evaluating the responses to those requests that we receive from vendors. Other services that they perform that I would consider to be less essential, although not unimportant, are contract negotiation, vendor recruitment, so that we have a broad base of competition for county procurement, and providing information to the public. You would be surprised at the number of times purchasing receives a request for public information from a citizen or a vendor wanting to know about some procurement activity that has been undertaken. Key measures of success for purchasing I consider to be first and foremost the percent of all solicitations that result in multiple vendors trying to get our business. And for the most recent year, purchasing has succeeded in having 94% of all purchases that they were involved in be subject to competition of more than one vendor. We also want to assure lots of bids for each procurement that we do. And so the average number of vendors per bid is an important measure of the success of purchasing. We currently stand at just under 10 on average. We also, although we don't have any goals or targets in our procurement policy, we believe that it's important that we reach out to the disadvantaged business community and give them an opportunity to compete for our business. And so one of the important measures of success for purchasing is the extent to which we receive responses from disadvantaged business enterprises, not necessarily the extent to which those businesses receive the awards. They have to compete, but we want to make sure that they are in the game. And 14% of all responses that we have received over the past year have come from DBEs. On the chart at the bottom, you see the total number of purchases made by our purchasing department going back 10 years. That number also is decreasing as a result of the increased use of yearly contracts. The final department in the finance division is risk management, which exists to protect county assets and assure that our workers have a safe environment in which to do their jobs. The core services of risk management are the administration of the workers' comp program and claims mitigation and management. We do not hire outside vendors to adjudicate claims against the county. We do that generally, with few exceptions, we do that with county staff, and that staff resides in the risk management department. Other services that risk management is involved in are contract negotiations, assuring that vendors with whom we contract have adequate protections in place to keep the county from incurring liabilities unnecessarily, risk analysis, and safety inspections. Key measures of success for risk management are first and foremost the cost per employee for risk activities. This is an all-encompassing cost measure, takes into account insurance premiums, claims management costs, workers' compensation costs, and so forth, divided by the number of employees we have on board. And we stand right now at a little bit under $100 per month per employee, and it's been below that threshold forever. And that's what we want and what we expect. The number of new workers' comp claims, this is not the total number of claims being managed at any point in time. This is the number of new claims that have been made within a year. And in the most recent year, 237, that number has been declining over the past few years. It used to be closer to 350. It is declining as a result of the good efforts of our safety officer and our risk manager. And the number of new claims for auto damages and liability. That stands at 146 per year. And you can see in the chart at the bottom the total number of new claims for the past 7 years, and that also has been declining for the past several years, and that's what we want to see. So putting all of that together for the finance division operations, which you can find starting on page 63 of your budget document, total budget request is $6,988,000. You can see the proposed funding for each of the departments here, and you can see what the 2015 revised budget is as well. We budget transfers in the general fund each year for two purposes. First, to provide funding to the risk management fund to pay for auto and general liability claims. We are self-funded for those kind of claims. We don't assess costs for risk management to all of our operating departments. Instead, we do a lump sum transfer from the general fund to the risk management fund to provide the source of funding to pay those claims. And that amounts to $1,350,000, a little bit less than current year. We also provide funds to serve as a pool to provide matching funds for operating departments that apply for grants and can't locate matching funds within their existing operating budgets. That amounts to $350,000. So total budgeted transfers is $1,650,000 for 2016. That's the request. That's the same as current year. And that appears on page 88 of the budget document. We set aside extensive amounts of money for reserves, for various kinds of contingency reserves. The amounts in aggregate for 2016 are just under $24 million. You see the various components listed on this chart. They are, with one exception, exactly the same as the current year. The exception is a new reserve that has been set aside for YRC2. You've instructed us to begin to operate that program. The estimated cost of that program is $3.3 million. We don't yet know exactly how that's going to be done, and so we don't want to set up an operating budget until we have more certainty about what that budget's going to entail. And so we have set aside the funding for that in the budget request as a reserve to be moved to corrections once final decisions are made about how that money will be used.
Hey, Chris?
Yes.
Could you send us something, Excel or whatever, that has these things listed here in addition to the amount that's forecasted for each one of those funds?
Yes.
You follow the...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I trust somebody's making a note of that. One point that I will make here is that on the 2015 column, you see here I am identifying the adopted budget. On all of the other slides, I've identified the revised budget. The reason that I don't identify the revised budget here is that the way we use reserves is not to incur expenditures in these accounts, but rather to transfer the budget authority from the reserve account to the appropriate operating budget for the expenditure to be made. And so over the course of the year, from January the 1st, as we incur expenditures funded with reserves, the amount of budgeted reserves decreases and the amount of operating budgets increase by a corresponding number. And so to show the revised budget here would give you a misleading sense of what is happening from one year to the next with regard to the budget for reserves. We are responsible for providing funding, the funding that is appropriated to WATC each year, and you'll see that on page 605 of the budget. The budget for 2016 is proposed to be identical to the revised budget for 2015. That consists of two pieces. $793,000 is provided to WATC as general operating support, and $170,000 is provided pursuant to the contract that we have with WATC and NIAR for the operation of NCAT. Under that agreement, we provide space to NIAR. WATC is contracted to be the manager of that space, and they have the responsibility to fund the operations and maintenance of that space. Because we have given NIAR the rights to use some of that space, but not given WATC the money to pay for that O&M cost through the contract, we reimburse them for the utilities and maintenance costs that are incurred to support NIAR's use of the space, and that amounts to about $170,000. Wichita State University receives the proceeds of a 1.5 mil special tax levy and associated revenues. Under state law, there are a variety of revenues, foremost of which is motor vehicle taxes, that must be distributed in the same fashion as real and personal property ad valorem taxes. So all of those diverse sources amount to $7,742,000 next year. You see on this chart the revised budget, which is actually also the adopted budget for 2015. You see the same numbers for 2016. I haven't yet received the detailed budget proposal from WSU, and so I've simply plugged those numbers in as a holding place or a placeholder for right now. But when you receive the recommended budget, I suspect that you will see the total amount of money stays the same, but the allocation among those accounts is somewhat different than what you're seeing here. That budget, by the way, is on page 609 of the budget book. Debt service appears starting on page 165 of your book, behind the tab that I think is called Bond and Interest.
The debt service budget for 2015 that has been requested is $20.5 million. That's about $800,000 less than the debt service budget for 2014. And that requested budget funds all current outstanding debt and the debt that is anticipated to be sold this year, somewhat later in this year. Finally, economic development, which is a separate budget. It appears in your budget document under the community development tab on page 595, starting on page 595. The economic development program provides principally services to assure that we know the degree to which companies that we have entered into incentive agreements with are complying with those agreements. So compliance reviews is a key activity of the economic development program. Secondly, that program is evaluating new prospects as those prospects are brought to us by our friends at GWEDC or the City of Wichita or the State of Kansas. We also, in economic development, operate a foreign trade zone, and we operate the Affordable Airfares program. And I'll spend more time talking about each of those in just a moment. The purpose of the economic development program is to expand employment opportunities and income levels in the county. We do that by evaluating businesses' requests for incentives that will help them make location decisions or expansion decisions. We also, as I said, administer existing agreements to assure that companies are delivering to us what they promised to deliver in the way of new jobs and capital investment. And to the extent that we find they are not in compliance with agreements they've made, then it's the role of the economic development program to implement the clawback provisions that exist in every one of our incentive agreements. The Foreign Trade Zone is a program that is authorized under federal law, and Sedgwick County administers a foreign trade zone for south central Kansas. The purpose of the program is to provide a mechanism by which businesses that are engaged either in importing goods or exporting goods can conduct their business at lower costs. And by operating out of the foreign trade zone designated areas, they are able to avoid various tariffs and levies, and that reduces their overall cost of business and increases their competitiveness in international markets. We have, and the numbers in the middle on this under who receives services have not been updated from last year's slide. I apologize for that. We have currently three sites that are designated as foreign trade zones or foreign trade zone subsidiaries, and about 8 companies operating out of those three sites. The Affordable Airfares program was created originally by the City of Wichita in 2002. The Sedgwick County joined with the City of Wichita to help fund that program in 2005, and in 2006 Sedgwick County assumed administrative responsibility for that program, and we have operated the program ever since. Purpose is to incentivize low-fare carriers to serve the Wichita market. You'll recall that prior to the implementation of the program, Wichita had among the highest airfares in the country, and that was certainly a detriment to local businesses and local residents who chose to travel for recreational purposes. Many people were faced with having to drive to remote airports, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, in some cases even Denver, because the fares were so much cheaper in those locations than in Wichita. And some businesses left our community and said that a key reason
for their departure was the uncompetitive airfares that they faced operating in Wichita. With the low-fare carriers, that situation has been reversed. We now have fares that are at the national average and lower than our regional competitors, and we have seen rapid increases in the number of passengers using our airport, and we no longer hear from local businesses that airfares are an impediment to doing business in this market. The total requested budget for economic development is just under $9.5 million, a little bit less than in the current year. You see the components of the program listed above. I didn't mention the microloan program. That is a program that is administered for us by the South Central Kansas Economic Development District using money that Sedgwick County originally received in the 1990s from a federal community development block grant. And the block grant provided seed money that allowed us to create a revolving fund that is provided in the form of very small loans to startup businesses in our community. A typical loan will be something less than $50,000. As businesses repay those loans, the money, the principal and interest goes back into the pool to be reused for new loans. And we expect to make about $40,000 worth of loans for that program in 2016 as well as in 2015. The total budget for the economic development program itself is listed here at $2,040,000. That's the budget request for 2016. That is about $42,000 less than in the current year. The biggest source of the reduction is the county's membership in the REAP organization. Current year, our membership costs $35,000. The Commission has elected not to be a member of REAP, and so we are not budgeting that for next year. There also is a reduction in personnel cost, but again, as the Budget Office starts plugging in pay adjustments for 2016, I would expect that $86,000 number for personnel will increase to something similar to the 2015 budget.
Chris?
Yes.
Back to that previous slide. The line there for forgivable loan obligations. I know I'd asked on something this before. I'd like to get a list of those, but listed out by year. I mean, our commitment on a yearly basis for each one of the loans that we have commitments to.
Okay.
Like some of them are 5 years long, so for they'll be listed under 5 different years. Some of them are 1 or 2, and then we can do a sum total. Does that make sense? You gave me something that listed the entities and their total amount, but I want to see the expenditures over a period of time for those that are paid over.
Are you referring to the annual report that we gave you?
No, it was an email you sent me.
I'm sorry?
It was an email that you told me.
Okay, I'll try and track that down or come visit you. Yes, we'll provide whatever it is that you're asking for once I really understand what you're asking for. The Affordable Airfares Program has a proposed budget of $7,375,000 for 2016. That is the same amount as in 2015. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, our contract with Southwest Airlines is $6.5 million. Why is the budget $7,375,000? The answer is governmental accounting. We receive $4.5 million. $4.75 million from the state, and expect to receive that again for the 2016 year. And so you see that in the white here on the left. We also receive $791,000 from the city of Wichita that provides their half of the local matching funds that we are required to put up in order to receive the $4,750,000 from the state. In addition to that, when you add those together, you end up with something less than $6.5 million. So the amount that we are paying Southwest exceeds the amount of funding that we receive from the state program. State program being the state money and the required local match. The excess cost, the additional costs that we incur over the amount of the state program, both the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County are required to put up independently of the state grant, and that amounts to $83,300. So when you look at expenditures in the county's budget, the county local match, $791,000, is a payment, a transfer, if you will, from the general fund to the Affordable Airfares Fund to provide that match. The additional amount of money that covers our half of the additional cost of the program, $83,333, also is transferred from the general fund to the Affordable Airfares Fund. That's an expenditure of the general fund. So within the general fund, there is an expenditure of the sum of $791,000 and $83,000, amounts to $875,000. That expenditure goes to the Affordable Airfares Fund, where it is matched with the city's total $875,000 and the state's $4,750,000 to provide funding sufficient to pay Southwest Airlines $6.5 million. The local match requirements, the transfers from the general fund, plus the expenditures out of the airfares fund to pay Southwest Airlines, together add up to $7,375,000. And so that is the requested budget for the program. That is the extent of my presentation. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you might have. I know there's some information that you've asked for, and we'll provide that as quickly as we can. We have in the room Dr. Tony Kinkle, who is the president of WATC, and I know that there have been some questions from time to time about the funding that we provide to WATC, and so he had asked if he could be a part of this presentation, and I'm happy to invite him up here so that he can provide information to you about WATC's use of the county's money.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. I think the state has indicated that they're only going to fund airfares for one more year. So the 2-year budget they're debating right now only has 1 year's worth of funding in that proposal, I believe. Is that correct? Do you know?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so now their budget starts, their fiscal 16 budget starts July 1 of 2015.
Yes.
And goes until June 30th of 2016.
Yeah.
And so only for 6 months of next year, only for basically the first half of the calendar year, will we actually have funds coming from the state to that program. Does that change in any way our obligation to fully fund this to $7 million or $6 million? Our part of it is, as you said earlier.
The question that we may have to consider at this time next year is whether or not we want to continue the program or can continue the program in some fashion without state funding. We understand that the state is providing one more year of funding to the program, which, as you say, carries us through the end of the state's 2016 fiscal year that ends June 30 of 2016. Starting July 1 of 2017, we have not heard from Southwest that they will stay in this market without continued funding. And so to the extent that Southwest says to us, we don't get more money for the next fiscal year, we're going to leave the market, we're going to have a decision to make.
I understand.
And so in this budget, I am including the funding that gets us through the next contract year, that is through June 30 of 2016. When we are preparing the 2017 budget, we will have to decide whether or not we want to continue whether or not we need to continue providing funding, or accept the notion that Southwest is going to leave the market.
I guess my question really is, though, for us to get state money into that program, do we need to fund just the first 6 months to get their commitment to that money, or do we have to fund the full calendar year? That's my question.
We have to fund the full fiscal year, and that's what we're doing here. The local match is the way the state views it. The local match is the first money used to pay Southwest every contract year. So we will, I presume, enter into a contract with Southwest to provide a $6.5 million revenue guarantee for the period that extends from July 1st of 2015 through June 30 of 2016.
Okay.
We will use the local match that you saw on this slide first, and then we will use the state's $4.75 million to pay the balance of the $6.5 million over that 12-month period.
Is that payment made to Southwest one time a year?
No.
No,
they send us statements every month showing us the amount of revenue that they earned serving Wichita, the cost that they incurred serving Wichita, and the difference between those two numbers, and an invoice to the extent that there's a shortfall.
So as we partner with the state on this, 2015, the second half of 2015 is already budgeted by last year's county commission budget. So that's really not a matter of discussion. But from January to June next year is the amount of time that the state would potentially put some money up. We'd have to...
No. What we're trying to do is match a state fiscal year into a county budget cycle. And so for purposes of this program, we're operating on a July to June cycle of activity.
All right.
Let me clarify along that. Go ahead. But our matching funds for June of this year to July of next year is in this year's budget.
Yes.
Yes. So this amount that we're putting in for next year's budget would apply from
that's right.
July
I
16 to
yes.
June of 17.
Yes.
So in fact, if they don't fund it beyond this 1 year, next year, and we decide not to give them 800,
then we won't spend this budget.
Then we'll have that money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's better.
Got myself confused.
I guess the second question is all of the economic development money that's on slide 30, actually on slide 2, all of that, I'm on slide 2. I messed up. I lost track of which slide I was looking for here. I apologize. But all the economic development money that we're talking about, the $2 million or so, all of that is property tax funded. Is that correct?
It's all in the general fund. And the largest single source of revenue in the general fund is property tax, but it's not the sole source of funding.
I guess that actually is on slide 2. EcoDevo is $9.4 million total.
Right.
And that was 13% of the finance division's budget. But of the property tax funds that we have, if you want to use $125 million as our total amount of property tax dollars, roughly $9.5 million out of $125 million is a fair amount of money. It's a pretty good percentage, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't agree that that's a correct assessment.
No.
The expenditures that come out of the general fund can't be solely attributed to any single funding stream.
Okay.
We have the general fund, sales tax. We have the property tax, sales tax, use taxes, mortgage registration fees, motor vehicle taxes, literally about 100 revenue sources that provide funding to the general fund. The sum of those add up to about $180 million, I believe. The general fund represents about $125 or $130 million of that total. But I think it would be
Property tax reference.
It would be inaccurate to say that any single expenditure is paid for only with property taxes and not with any of those other revenues.
That's a complex answer to my simple mind. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I appreciate the answer. I just wanted to try to get my an assessment of how much money of our budget and different different ways to evaluate how much more invested in economic development is really my question.
I think the correct calculation would be to take the $2 million on slide 29,
plus the $4,000 for foreign trade zone on 28, plus the $875,000 that is local match on slide 30. That's the county's portion of the local match. The sum of those as a percentage of $180 million would be the number that I think you're looking for.
Okay.
That would be economic development as a percentage of the total general fund.
Why would you not include affordable airfares in that?
Because that, for the most part, doesn't flow through the general fund. It is in no way attached to property taxes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is for me, the 5th time going through this stuff and hearing you explain some of this stuff, and it's starting to stick. So thank you for your patience.
Commissioner Howell, you need to be reelected.
Maybe next year I'll get it. I don't know.
Commissioner Peter John.
Well, when you have a 4-year term, you get a little breathing room between now and then. Let me ask you, Chris, in terms of on the debt side of the equation, your slide 22, and looking at the budget book in terms of breaking it down between, we've got debt service as opposed to general fund or whatever. Is there any? I know obviously we've talked about how some of the projects, whether they're in public works or they're in the CIP, in or out, talked about debt funding on some. Is there a good way of getting a breakdown? Because I was talking with some folks, and we've had some discussion recently of past financial commitments that the county's fulfilling that's included in the debt service fund that I think is general fund allocated. To be specific, I'll mention 2 since Dr. Kinkle's here. Obviously, we've got the buildings up on Webb Road, and I'm thinking that's somewhere around $3 million. Is it 3.4 at the moment?
Yes, right now it's 3.4.
3.4 million this year. And Exploration Place, I think it was a little over 1.1 million. Yeah. In terms of breaking it down and how much time we've got on these, because obviously the debt service on those, but those are the funds for that is basically coming out of the ultimately is coming out of the general fund, isn't it, originally, and then ends up in the debt service fund?
No, that's not quite right. The bond and interest fund is segregated from the general fund. It's not a part of it. And we levy taxes specifically to fund the bond and interest fund. Those monies don't flow through the general fund. The bond and interest fund has as its funding sources property taxes that are levied specifically to pay debt service, special assessments that have been imposed on residents for those kinds of projects, the roughly $1.5 million of sales tax that is dedicated to road projects and that has been used to repay debt service on roads. And am I leaving anything out?
Nothing significant.
Okay. So it has those. Property tax is the significant funding source, but not the sole funding source. But none of that revenue flows through the general fund.
Okay.
Now, to the extent that we don't levy property taxes for debt service, clearly we have the discretion to levy higher taxes to fund the general fund, so that there's a net wash to the taxpayers. But the expenditures that we incur for WATC's debt service or for Exploration Place's debt service is not a part of that $180 million general fund budget that I mentioned.
Well, okay, I understand that we've got different within the county's 29.474, I think it is, mill levy. We've got different allocations. WSU is 1.5 mills. And then it's broken down into different categories for different areas, and that can vary sometimes year to year. I'm trying to get a better way of having some public, having more attention in terms of where we are with the debt service, in terms of how much, what we're paying for with this debt service. I mean, $20 million is a significant sum, ballpark. Last year, of course, this year it's 21.5. Last year was in 14 was almost 21.4 million.
In the Excel file that Commissioner Ranzau and I provided to you a couple of weeks ago, you may recall that there are 2 worksheets that are included that show all outstanding debt service obligations of Sedgwick County. One of those worksheets identifies all facility and drainage debt, and that would include Exploration Place and WATC. The other worksheet identified all debt service outstanding for roads and bridge projects. But you can see on that worksheet the individual bond issues that must be repaid each year, how much each year for each bond issue, and what the total is for 2015, 2016, and so on.
Well, I'm just for budget purposes, would like to, and I remember that presentation very well that you and Chairman Ranzau worked on. But in terms of having more visibility in terms of what we're currently paying for in terms of total cost, because I'm afraid so much of it gets has a tendency to get out of, if it's not in front of folks, it has a tendency to be overlooked, and that debt service is certainly a significant sum each year. Plus, we have the results of what we've paid for that around us. So I'm trying to get more attention in terms of more visibility as we have these discussions going forward. More of a comment than a question, Chris.
Understand.
Thank you.
Are you ready for Dr. Kinkle?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You paused a little there. I got nervous, but thank you.
No, just making sure no other lights came on, because sometimes they pop up slowly.
Mr. Chairman, I want to mention with Mr. Cronus, I came here and been fortunate to watch this presentation. I want to thank him. I don't know if you know this, he attends, our board has a monthly finance committee meeting, and he comes over and attends and offers his outstanding advice, and also participates when we're searching for good finance people. So thank you, Mr. Cronus, very much on behalf of our board. Mr. Chairman and members, I'm honored to be here, honored to be a part of Wichita Area Technical College. Thank you so much for your support. We had commencement last night, and Commissioner Peterjohn was there handing out the degrees and diplomas and certificates. Over 110 folks graduated, walked the ceremony. We graduated 160, but 110 walked. And so we're kind of on a high from last night. We're very excited about that. So, Mr. Chairman, you may remember the Wichita Eagle editorial about a year ago. I love this quote. It says, "No other institution governed by the Kansas Board of Regents even approaches WATC's impressive growth." And last year our growth was 14%. We'll finish this year with some growth, but it's evened out because the economy's gotten better, and many of our students are going back to work. But we're proud of what we do. Our purpose is very clear. We do 2 things and 2 things only. We offer students a chance at a better life, and we try to train the best possible employees for area businesses. Our students, 90% of our students are from Sedgwick County, and well over 85% of the graduates who are employed stay in Sedgwick County. We are very clear on our priorities. Aviation is first, but we also do healthcare, manufacturing, nursing, technical professionals, and recently you read about, and many of you were at our groundbreaking ceremony for the new Shocker Pathways partnership that we have with Wichita State University. You can get the first 50 credits of an associate's degree with us, 15 credits with WSU, and you're jointly enrolled. So it's a wonderful partnership, so we're excited about that. Commissioner Peterjohn mentioned the debt service. We are extremely grateful for the beautiful building. that you have entrusted us to be your manager. It is a world-class facility. It is arguably the finest aviation training facility in the world, and we hope we are good stewards of that and very appreciative of that debt service. You may notice in fiscal year 19, there's a dip there, and I'm told that there was some refinancing, and the county will be able to save $300,000 in that year moving forward. Now, I ran out of room. I believe it goes out, it's a 30-year, I believe, Mr. Cronus. I didn't have room to put all that, but I did want to show that there is some savings coming in the future, and we're very appreciative of that contribution by the county. We're also very appreciative of the county appropriation that you give us each year. Here's a history, and I was pleased to hear, given this fiscal environment that we're in, I was pleased to hear the recommendation that we will, or the recommendation is at least flat funding. And given this environment, we think that's extraordinary on your part to prioritize us. And so thank you for that. We hope you'll consider that recommendation. And it is very helpful to us as we, in fact, want to show you where those dollars are going. This is the return on investment. And on the left there, it shows a history, and I started as president in 2010. That's the number of industry credentials that we've produced. That's about an 80% increase in the last 4 years, about a 60% increase to the number of graduates. Now, you might say, how come there's more credentials than graduates? And the answer for that is that many of our graduates get multiple credentials. And so that's good. That's good for the economy. And you can see our job, even though we're graduating that many more folks and have that many more folks with credentials, our job placement rate is at the highest it's ever been. And you can see on the right, that's the number of credits that we sell, and that also is at the highest level ever. So thank you for that investment that you're making in us. On the left shows all of the programs that we currently do. I also want to mention we're very efficient. We looked at the other 7 technical colleges in the state of Kansas, and we looked at the number of employees, full-time employees we have, and the number of students that we serve. And you can see we're at the top of the list. Our efficiency rating, we serve 12.9 students per full-time employee, and that is the best in the state. So we're trying to be good stewards of your dollars. Now, I don't need to tell any of you this, but there are 5 aviation clusters in the world, and one of them is located here in South Central Kansas. It is a crown jewel. The others are in Dallas, Fort Worth, Montreal, Seattle, and Toulouse, France. But I got to tell you, we're getting some pretty stiff competition from Brazil and Mexico, the European Union, Russia, Japan. China seems to send a delegation every month over to visit the National Center for Aviation Training. An interesting quote there at the bottom by an expert in the aviation industry. It's very difficult to build an aviation cluster, but it's easy to destroy one. So we're blessed with your support to be able to do that. This is the issue for us, and this slide comes straight from the aviation industry. We work with Textron and Spirit and the others, Learjet. They're estimating about 800 vacancies. They're also estimating about 1,100 retirements. So you add that up, there's a need for about 1,900 aerospace aviation workers. That does include engineering. We currently produce about 250 graduates a year. WSU produces their slice of engineering. There's a gap there of about 1,650. Half of that gap, the industry tells us they can get with recalls, but they also are telling us that they've just about exhausted all of the folks that are on their recall lists. So we still have a gap. Now we produce 61 students are in our high school Senate Bill 155 pipeline. That is going up. There's a 17% increase this summer in aviation-related enrollment, so that's a good sign. But there is still a gap. there is still a sizable gap in the amount of graduates that we have to produce. So with your investment, we'll continue to try to meet that gap. And then finally, Mr. Chairman and members, you know this, aviation to Kansas, it's 119,000 direct and indirect jobs. It's $7 billion industry in Kansas. 22% of the entire economy in Kansas is aviation related. And for every dollar spent on manufacturing, we generate $1.48 in our state. So, Mr. Chairman, members, thank you for the debt service, for the beautiful building, and thank you for that appropriation. We hope you'll consider that. We hope we've been good stewards. And I thank you very much for the privilege to serve your college here in Wichita.
Thank you, Dr. Kinkle. Commissioner Peter John has some questions.
Well, I mentioned the graduation earlier today during our commission meeting. That did get a little bit of attention at that point. Let me ask a couple questions, because you mentioned the number of job availability. You said half coming from recall and about 250 were coming out of WATC. Does that include the SB 155, or is that in addition to, or?
That number includes what we produce through SB 155.
That includes that, okay.
Correct.
Do you have any idea what WSU produces, or maybe the other colleges in Kansas would produce against that number?
There are no other colleges in Kansas that do the aviation training side. On the engineering side, I do not know how many engineers WSU is producing. I know they're ratcheting up the number, as well as KU. I don't have that side of it.
Okay.
But we're the only ones that do the aerospace, the painting and coating, the avionics, the aerostructures, all of those manufacturing. The manufacturing side, we're the only college that does that in the state.
Okay. Of the NIAR NCAT facilities up on the 3 buildings at Webb Road, what percentage of the total square footage up there would the NIAR NCAT be of your total facility up there?
Gosh, and we have 3 facilities now, as you mentioned. We have East High School, that part of East High School for our campus at Grove. Of course, we have Southside right next to Boeing. I'm going to have to get back to you on that, Commissioner. I want to say off the top of my head that the NCAT square footage that's available for us to use represents about 35% of our total square footage that we use, but let me get back to you on that exact number.
Okay. I wanted to get a better understanding on the NIAR NCAT side of the equation, because that was part of the synergy that everybody, I think, has been trying to achieve. Thank you.
Yep. Commissioner Unruh?
Dr. Kinkle, thanks for that report information. You didn't, I know, because aviation kind of dominates all of our conversation, but you got quite a program in healthcare and training folks for that industry, which is a big part of our economy here. I mean, can you make a short comment about how we're supporting that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Unruh, yes, we have the largest nursing program in the state of Kansas. We are providing surgical technicians, dental assistants. We are looking at a number of other healthcare programs right now with industry to meet some of the needs. Physical therapy assistant, occupational therapy assistant. We're in the R&D phase of looking at those as well. So healthcare is a very large component of what we do, and candidly, it is the fastest growing component of our college. Aviation tends to be cyclical, and so we realize at our college we have to diversify, and so we are looking at additional healthcare programs, additional professional service programs, and we're hopeful Shocker Pathways gives us some additional revenue sources. As you all know, technical programs are very expensive, and our enrollments are regulated. They're smaller. For example, I can only put 15 students in a nursing program per faculty member. But if I have a general psych course or a sociology course, I can put 60 students in there. And so we recognize we have to diversify our funding streams. And so we hope Shocker Pathways helps us generate additional revenue to help subsidize our high-cost technical programs. So, yes, healthcare is actually the fastest growing part of our college right now.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you. I was just curious, Dr. Kinkle, are there any Kansas Regions schools that are providing any type of pilot training anywhere in Kansas?
Yes, I believe Kansas State University at Salina. And I want to mention, they approached WATC about 4 years ago on perhaps partnering on pilot training at NCAT. We were open to that. Our board was open to that, authorized me to have those negotiations. The hang-up is that they wanted to use some of the NCAT facilities during the middle of the day when we are in the middle of our manufacturing programs. We offered them space at night, and they were unwilling to do a night program. And so we could not put that program together. We are certainly open to that if they're willing to partner at night to do that. We just can't afford to take any of our space during the day offline because we're not meeting the manufacturing needs right now of our community. So if they'd be willing to do that, we would be willing to do that.
So you actually have like a lack of space to do that type of additional?
During the day, yeah. We're maxed out right now during the day.
It just seems like the air capital of the world. We got this beautiful facility right next to our runway. It just seems like low-hanging fruit. And if you've ever seen the demographics on the expected pilot shortages coming up, it is alarming. And I just think that somebody ought to have the vision to let our Kansas, South Central Kansas community, I guess, lead that issue as well. It's not a discussion I think we've had in the past, but I hope someone's thinking about that because it seems like there's a tremendous opportunity with that issue.
Yep, we agree. We're also looking at if there's any opportunity in drones, as well as air traffic controllers. When you look at the data demographics on air traffic controllers, there's a huge shortage with all the retirements. So we're constantly churning to find where our niche is in all of those programs. But certainly our board is open to pilot training, provided the numbers work and we can work out the space. And so we've extended that invitation to Kansas State, but we've not gotten back. They've not gotten back to us in a couple of years. So,
all right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Kinkle. Looks like no other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, that was, I believe, the conclusion of our Division of Finance, Economic Development, and Technical Education, et cetera, presentation. Do you have any additional questions for Mr. Cronus?
Seeing none.
Okay, well, then we had some time set aside for discussion today, but I would take this opportunity to remind you that we do have a significant block of time set aside tomorrow, about an hour and a half for discussion. And you might recall when we talked about the budget calendar, we had kind of hoped that would be a point at which we could get some direction and guidance after you'd had a chance to hear from our department heads on their budget requests. And so I would put that forth to you for consideration. And then if there's no discussion today, I would recommend we adjourn. And we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Looks like that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.